Discovery, go at throttle up. SLS blasted off at 12:47 a.m. Central on November 16th. Here you see the 4 RS-25 engines lighting up the Florida sky. And this video shows SLS and Orion's climb to orbit from the perspective of a camera on the rocket. It was about an 8.5-minute climb to orbit. And following liftoff and that climb to orbit, the translunar injection burn took place for Artemis 1. The TLI maneuver took place as the upper part of the rocket, officially named the Interim Cryogenic Propulsion Stage, fired one RL-10 engine, producing 24,750 pounds of thrust to accelerate the vehicle to more than 22,600 miles per hour, a velocity fast enough to overcome the pull of Earth's gravity and propel Orion out of low Earth orbit to send the spacecraft to the moon. The TLI maneuver precisely targeted a point above the moon that will guide Orion close enough to be captured by the moon's gravity. And right after that TLI burn, the interim cryogenic propulsion stage separated from Orion, which you did just see a video of that on your screen there. Later that day, we received our very first imagery of Earth, as well as completed the first checkout of the Orbital Maneuvering System engine, or OMS engine, which went smoothly. Orion was officially on the way to the moon, and again, that OMS engine is the same engine that will be utilized today as we bring Orion home. Now, several days later, on November 21st, Orion performed the outbound powered flyby burn with the orbital maneuvering engine as well. This video shows Orion as it approaches the moon for this burn. And following that burn, Orion completed its closest approach to the lunar surface, where it was just about 80 miles above the lunar surface. And then Orion completed the distant retrograde orbit, which enabled Orion to head out into deep space.
Morning from the nation of Orange. Yeah, you guys can go kick your ball around the court. We'll be doing stuff like this. Have fun with your ball kicking, though.
That distant orbit. And this was the furthest point that Orion reached during its mission. Orion was 268,563 miles from our home planet when this photo was taken on November 28th. Orion has now traveled further than any spacecraft built for humans meant to return back to planet Earth.
Morning. Oh.
And in this photo, Orion's solar rays split the difference between the Earth and the Moon on flight day 14.
Nice.
This image was captured by a camera on the tip of one of the spacecraft's 4 solar arrays.
Just. Never mind. Oh.
And just last week, the distant retrograde departure burn occurred, which placed Orion in a trajectory to exit distant retrograde orbit and head back toward the moon ahead of RPF today, which we are awaiting and looking forward to. And here's some video just prior to that burn.
Oh, thanks, Noswolf. I'm glad you liked it.
And you can see Earth there in the almost center of your screen, right behind the solar array. So as you can see, Orion has had an exciting journey so far, but still a few days left in this mission.
Estimated time
At this time, Orion
11.
is 5,191 miles away from the lunar surface. And we're under 2 hours and 30 minutes away from today's return power flyby burn. Again, this burn is slated to begin at 10:43 a.m. Central and will be a 3-minute, 27-second burn.
I didn't watch any football yesterday, Panta. Miller, you're home with your daughter. She got the flu. This is making it a little bit better. Yep. All right. So why did I come here in the middle of my day off, in the middle of Monday morning? We got the return powered flyby burn for Orion. This thing is gonna get I think it's 70 miles, 80 miles off the surface of the moon in the daylight, and will kind of inadvertently fly over the Apollo sites. It's going to be really high up when it flies over the Apollo site. The return flyby is not going to be... It's on the close side of the moon, but it's not really near the closest approach is not really near the Apollo sites per se, but it will be past Paraselene when they fly over. But we're going to get a transiting pass on the moon, on the close side of the moon, in the daylight. When Orion went outbound to the moon and did the outward powered flyby burn a week and a half ago, the close side of the moon was dark. So this should get us the best views of the entire mission. That's why I'm here. Will we be able to see the footsteps? No, not even close. It'll be 6,000 miles off the surface when it flies over the Apollo sites. Dallas 54, Indy 19. Yeah, I didn't watch any football. I cleaned up the garage. Yeah, there you go, Herbert. I mean, they'll listen. You just got to say something. You think the footsteps are still there? The footsteps are still there, Mark. Yeah, it's not like there's wind. Yeah, they're still there, man. Yeah, so we'll start the week off with a nice lunar flyby. I think this is... Yeah, that sounds right. Oh, okay. Signal hand over there. I love refrigerators, man. Yeah, we got a bunch of French flags up there, Joseph, yeah. Can we take a telescope and point it at the moon while in orbit? I mean, yeah. Yeah, grab shot. Yeah, that's pretty good. Real with the flyby. Will they have refrigerators on the Orion capsule? Yeah, just put it outside. You know, you might have a case of the Mondays, but this will fix that. Closest flyby should be about an hour and a half. So I'm here. Isn't the Orion capsule a giant refrigerator? Isn't the Orion a big refrigerator for humans to stay fresh? No. It keeps humans fresh. No, keeps alive, not fresh. We're not eating the humans. RJ, that's not what we're doing. That's why this analogy really doesn't work, because we don't eat people.
Again, you're looking at a live view of the moon as it continues to close, as Orion continues to close in. Now, 5,058 miles above the lunar surface. Orion is traveling at a velocity of 3,933 miles per hour and is 234,000 miles from planet Earth.
This is a nice way to wake up. This is nice. So I'm gonna I want to see the return powered flyby. That's really what I'm here for. I'm here for the RPF and the close flyby.
Now, in this image of Earth right now, we actually are able to view several Apollo landing sites rather. Of course, we are a bit too far away to make out any distinct features, but you are looking at the landing sites for Apollo 15, 17, 11, 16, and 14.
Yeah, the sites are over here. See these gray regions? Those are the lunar basaltic regions, the lunar lowlands. That's where most of the Apollo missions landed. 11, I think, is right here. If I'm looking at this correctly, I think the lunar North Pole is here. I think. Oh, thanks, NASA. Very cool.
And you are looking at a graphic here that shows a little more clearly those landing sites and Orion's path as it flies around it. Again, Orion is about 5,000 miles away from the lunar surface, so we won't be able to make out any details.
Orion,
and at its closest approach, Orion will be 80 miles above the lunar surface, still a little too far to make out any of those details.
I wish they left an American flag there instead of bringing it back. There's 6 American flags on the moon, Mark. You just saw the points where they're all at. Yeah, I know flags react to radiation and they're discolored. Shh. Is it true that they're going to mine helium-3 from the moon so that the reactor barely worked yet? I haven't heard anybody that has plans to do that, Gabriel. Fred, I will override all hat changes today. Sorry. Streamer privilege. Hey, Sadie, what's going on? 6 flags on the moon. That's right, Alex. Yes. Yeah, you can use your worthless channel points for whatever you want. I'm not changing my hat. It's Monday. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that.
As we continue to get these great views of the moon, we did mention that NASA Flight Director Rick LeBrode is leading the team here in Mission Control Houston inside the White Flight Control Room during today's burn. But let's take a quick look at this video, which discusses the various flight directors of Artemis in a little bit more detail.
I don't know if Shep took the golf club.
Flight CTO and flight loop.
Buddy, come for cooling status.
Echo AOS, good for happy.
Flight controllers generally focus on systems, subsystems of the vehicle, and they're more in tune with the detailed workings of their particular system that they're responsible for. Flight directors, on the other hand, are more in tune with what is the integration between all of the subsystems. What are we all marching towards? What's our mission objective?
Prop flight has the RCS holding together with the regs.
Really, your training starts when you become a flight controller. You know, you learn a lot by osmosis, and you kind of get a sense of a little bit of the job, but once you become a flight director, the amount of learning you do is exponential.
You don't become an expert, but you have to understand them at a depth where you could have the good conversation, ask the right questions to the experts who are the flight controllers. You spend a lot of time studying and then training, getting in simulations and running through all the motions and practicing the real-time situation scenarios in the training environment.
I am the ascent and entry flight director for Artemis 1. I will take responsibility of the vehicle after it launches. I'll also be the entry flight director, so once we come back to Earth, I'll have a team that will monitor and control the vehicle once it splashes down, and we hand that over to Melissa Jones, who is the NASA Recovery Director.
Splashdown. Touchdown verify. Copy.
I'm the lead flight director for the mission, really responsible for the overall development of the mission. We work directly with the programs. They provide us the mission priorities, and we build a timeline that's going to accomplish those mission objectives. We're responsible for building our team, getting our team trained and certified. We have a training team that helps us, but we have the overall responsibility for putting together the team that's going to execute the mission.
Confirmation of translunar injection burn cutoff.
When you go to a place like the moon or Mars, you really have to be explorers. It pushes the boundaries of civilization.
We are having to develop new technology that's going to have to sustain the astronauts for these very, very long trips. And it just makes sense to test that in going to the moon, where you're in a similar environment, but you're much closer. And in the event of an emergency type scenario, we can bring them safely back home.
Station, this is Houston.
We've had a lot of experience now in low Earth orbit, over 50, 60 years of experience, and we've learned how to do that pretty well. We've learned what the effects of the body are in low Earth orbit, but there's still things that we need to practice, and we need to be able to understand how you sustain life further and further and further away from our planet.
It's just so different from everything you learn when you do low Earth orbit. And that's what's making it so much fun. I'm every bit as excited about this mission as I was the first day I walked in the doors of Mission Control.
Where will Orion go after splashdown, and how long will it take? How long will it take for what? Orion's going to be recovered off the coast of San Diego in the Pacific Ocean. It's going to be recovered by an LPD ship with a well deck, and then it will probably be moved to Coronado and then shipped back to, I'm going to guess KSC. They're going to take components out, and some components will be used on Artemis 2. I don't know how long that's going to take. What's the point of going to a dead rock? Mars should be the goal. It's closer, Handy Snap. And going to the moon is a good training ground for going to Mars. Let's just go camping in Yellowstone with no experience. That's a real smart idea. Probably should, learn how to camp first. Just go camp in Yellowstone. Just walk around. You can just walk anywhere in Yellowstone, right? You won't step on a geyser. Nah, man, it's closer and handy. Honestly, it's harder to live on the moon than it is on Mars. If you can make a sustainable base here, you can absolutely make a sustainable base on Mars. It's actually easier. I would say it's easier to be on Mars. The problem is that the transit window from Mars only comes around every 26 months. So if you send humans out there, it's a 3-month trip out, 1 year stay on the surface, and then 3-month trip back. So whatever happens, you're not. There's no Apollo 13 scenario where you can get them back quick. So going to the moon and learning how to live there is probably a little bit of a smarter idea, if not safer. That's why we're doing it here first. Easier. It's easier to camp here than it is to camp on Mars. Yeah, there's Yogi the Bear in Yellowstone. You don't want to do that. Hey, boo-boo. 3 months, isn't it 7 months?
Everything
It really depends on what transit window you're taking.
Anticipate
You want to
the
take a
return
straight
powered
high-energy Hohmann
flyby
transfer?
burn
It's 3
in
months.
about 2 hours and 11 minutes. This burn will
Nice,
last
Nova.
for 3 minutes and 27 seconds and will change the velocity of the spacecraft by 960 feet per second.
When is this going to land? Earth. It'll be back on Earth on the 11th.
And this burn will also place Orion in a trajectory to head back home ahead of a splashdown in the Pacific Ocean on December 11th.
What, bears can't migrate, Venom? Jeez. You don't know. If you ran out of picnic baskets at Jellystone, you went to Yellystone. All right? You don't know. You don't know.
The next major milestone
biologist?
here in Mission Control
Boom.
Houston is when Flight Director Judd Freeling will pull the team of flight controllers
Why are they splashing down in the
for
Pacific
a
and not the Atlantic?
no-go for the
Orbital
burn.
mechanics. They're going to skip
We anticipate
off the
that pull
atmosphere,
about
dude.
an hour from now.
What's going on with Artemis today? Close flyby of the moon, friend Cam. Yeah, that's why I'm here. Bigger target? No, it's the skip that they're doing. What if you encountered Yogi Bear while camping? With bears, make loud noises and run away. I think. I don't know how to camp. Dude, I'm from the city, man. This has been your camping advice from the guy that lived in the city for the longest time. What happens if there's bad weather at splashdown? From low Earth orbit, you can just wave re-entry off for the day, but not here. Splashdown conditions are taken into consideration, banana time, but it's assessed on an on-need basis. Honestly, they're recovering with a well-deck ship, a blue water ship. You can recover in crappy weather. It's doable. Oh, watch an anime, Sneaky. Yes, that will teach me everything. If they're actually going to skip off the atmosphere a little bit, the amplitude of the skip is going to be a lot longer than Apollo. They're actually going to bounce off the atmosphere, and then after the first bounce off the atmosphere, it'll be more of a LEO style re-entry, which is actually pretty cool. What if Smokey the Bear was Yogi's cousin? What if that was a thing? Why did they skip off the atmosphere? What's the benefit? So first and foremost, friend, the benefit is to not liquefy your crew on board. I know we're mostly water. We're already pretty much liquefied, but humans are like a water balloon. If you could pop the water balloon, you don't want to pop the water balloon. That gets a little messy inside of the capsule. It's to mitigate G forces, so mitigate deceleration on reentry. The other thing is it's there for thermal management on the heat shield, so don't overheat the heat shield. Yes, coming back from the moon could roast the heat shield if you're not careful. But first and foremost, it's about the crew. Coming back from the moon, you're going to be hitting atmospheric interface north of 25,000 miles an hour.
We're just about an
That's
hour
really
away
fast.
from today's anticipated loss of signal. That LOS is slated to begin at 10:41 a.m.
That's like
Central.
40,000 kilometers an hour. It's
We will not
pretty
have
quick.
signal with the Orion spacecraft during this time frame because the moon will be blocking any signal to the Deep Space Network. It's at this point that Orion will complete its closest approach to the lunar surface. That closest approach slated to be at 10:43 a.m. and just seconds later at 10:43 and 23 seconds a.m. Central will be today's return-powered flyby burn, which commits Orion to a journey back home.
This is a big step. This is a big step here. This is getting the course change to land in the Pacific. Why don't we have arrays around the moon so we don't lose signal? That's what Gateway is for, Ivan. It's not there yet. They're working on it. Yeah, they're using Central Time, Harp. Why doesn't Orion, the largest spacecraft, just eat the atmosphere? Ah, yes. If we're skipping a rock, if we're skipping a rock over the ocean, why doesn't the rock just absorb all the water? Ah, yes. Science. They need to incorporate a solar sail that can be used to bleed off velocity. Is that feasible? Dead Scum, what you...
Orion is now 4,571 miles away from the moon, traveling at a velocity of 3,996 miles per hour.
That's what you're saying is like trying to say, oh, let's use the winds, let's use a headwind to stop an airplane, to stop a 737. I mean, maybe if the runway was long enough, sure, but just use the brakes. Use the brakes. I mean, it's possible though. Not a lot of people know that the James Webb Space Telescope, actually has a solar sail on it. Yep, it has a solar sail for trim. It uses solar winds as a trim tab. Yeah, not a lot of people know that. It's actually really freaking cool. On the back of James Webb, if you look at the graphics, on the very back of it, so the radar dish with all the hexagon is facing this way. On the very back, there's a little flap. The flap right there is a trim tab that's using solar winds to keep the satellite literally on an even keel. It's really freaking cool, actually. So it's not as infeasible as you might think. But you could do it, like atmospheric winds aren't going to stop a 737 on a runway, but an atmospheric winds will absolutely stop a glider, sure. Or a glider could get stuck in a thermal, and you could fly a glider to 30,000 feet with no engine. You know what I mean? You can do stuff like that. But like in terms of stopping a spacecraft from reentry, that would need to be a big solar sail.
Return-powered flyby burn. That burn will take place 2 hours and 4 minutes from now and will last 3 minutes and 27 seconds long. The burn will take place with the Orbital Maneuvering System engine, or OMS engine, located on the bottom of the service module of the Orion spacecraft. This engine is capable of
somewhere north of 30,
having burns that last less than 1 minute to more than 16 minutes in length.
Can someone explain why the return brings it underneath the Earth?
The OMS engine is the main engine on the European service module and provides the primary propulsion for Orion's major in-space maneuvers. The engine produces 6,000 pounds of thrust and is equipped to steer the spacecraft, and it can also be used in some abort cases to safely return Orion to Earth should that be required. The OMS engine is actually a repurposed Space Shuttle Orbital Maneuvering System engine that has flown in space before on 19 Space Shuttle flights, beginning with STS-41G in October 1984 and ending with STS-112 in October 2002.
Damn.
There are also 8 auxiliary engines on Orion. These are all...
There's wind in space, Congler. It's just not wind like you'd think down here. We're not. The wind down here is blowing atmospheric gases around, right? By heating, from atmospheric heating and cooling. So it's air, it's mostly nitrogen, oxygen, stuff like that. There's weather in space. There's wind. So what's the wind in space? There's different types of perturbing forces like that. The biggest one that we have to deal with the most is what are called hang on, she's moving around a little bit. It's not the moon, it's the solar panel. The solar panel on Orion is moving around. Moon's haunted. We're past Halloween. The moon isn't haunted. It's Christmas season, so it's enchanted. It's different. Okay, so Congler, there's the biggest one that we have to deal with the most is solar ionic radiation. So literally the sun's a big power plant, right? It's a big power plant, and it's a big fusion power plant. It's burning hydrogen, right? So just like any other power plant, it has exhaust, and that exhaust does get pushed out. Every once in a while, the sun has a backfire. I'm sure you've seen footage of the sun when it pops. That's called a coronal mass ejection. So the sun has a corona around it. It has a grav well, basically. And sometimes the ejection forces off the surface from like a sunspot, that's not the right term, like a sunspot popping, I guess. That's not the right way to say that. Sometimes the ionized exhaust basically from the sun gets popped out and gets out of the sun's gravitational pull and goes and radiates out in basically wind. It is a perturbing effect, and you can use it to trim spacecraft out. They absolutely do. They're doing it with James Webb right now. So it's not wind like you might think about it, and it's not nearly as powerful as like a wind gust down here, but there is wind in space. What the heck? That's some weeb stuff right here. Yeah, JSP, sure. Bob Rico, 27-month resub. Does that make sense? So, okay, so the second part of it is, that's insane. I still don't understand how a solar sail could trim via solar wind, but it's interesting. Same way a control surface on an airplane would work, man. It just pushes the solar winds in a different direction. Just like a trim tab on an airplane. Same thing. Like, I'm serious. It's a wing. James Webb has a wing on the back of it. You can see it in that picture. See? There's a trim tab on the back. It's not... Yeah, see, it's not as crazy as you might think. Yeah, see it over there? It's a rudder, like on a ship. I'm serious. Just a trim tab, dude. Make sure that the solar winds don't push it around, because that thing, the sun shields on James Webb are working. They work like a gigantic solar sail. It's like a sail on a sailboat. Same thing. It's nuts. It like you kind of takes a second to wrap your head around it, right? Because you're like, wait, huh? But yeah, there's perturbing forces in space. Oh yeah, all day. There's wind up there. Space has weather. Oh yeah, space has weather, dude. Yeah. So another viewer in chat had a good question. So Charlie, you had a question. Well, why is Orion coming in basically on a polar trajectory from Earth when it's kind of going around the equator of the moon? So the moon is 6 degrees inclined relative to Earth's equator. Okay, so if this line represents Earth's equator, you're looking at Earth from the side. The moon is 6 degrees off of that line. 6 degrees and about 370,000 kilometers away from center to center, right? Give or take. About 250,000 miles. And then the moon on top of that is tilted. It has a little bit of an axial tilt on top of its inclined position. So, long story short, nothing is like the Earth isn't pointed north-south and the moon isn't pointed perfectly north-south, and they don't orbit like perfectly around each other. So what NASA's doing is, like, if this is the moon's north and south pole over here and this is Earth, the moon is like this and Earth is like that, and the moon's up here somewhere, and it does something like this, right? So what NASA's doing is, during this return-powered flyby, they're going to do a slight inclination change on the vehicle. So they're basically going to shoot around the moon in a way that will get them to go into a polar orbit for better recovery conditions in the Pacific. Sounds weird that there's weather in a vacuum. Yeah, Farrell, it is, don't get me wrong, it's nothing like the weather down here, but it's the same ideas. Yeah, there you go, Vasia. An inclination change. There we go. 11:43 Eastern. So we're under 2 hours here. Yeah, no problem, Charlie. This one is a little bit harder to explain. Like here, I could try to draw it, I suppose. So like, if Earth is over here, right? And the moon's over here. Actually, let's do the moon here. And then your reference frame is like this. So, right, you have a dotted line like that. Like this. So what Orion is doing right now is it's coming back this way, right? And what they're going to do is they're going to burn, but when they do the return powered flyby, they're going to burn this way. They're going to point the rocket engine like towards the south pole of the moon, right? And they're going to basically have Orion, when it shoots around the moon, it's going to go up instead. Instead of just like going back this way and then going around Earth and then coming down like this, right? They're going to change the orbit and it's going to go up a little bit. They're changing inclination. And then when you do that, it's going to come around this way instead. You see what I mean? This one up here is more of a corkscrew rather than just a straight loop. It's going up and over. You can do that with the gravitational pull between celestial bodies. You can do weird stuff with it like this. That's totally doable. But yeah, they're doing a slight inclination change. And it's going to get, like, if you were looking at this, like, head on, right? So that's the moon, and that's Earth, right? When Orion comes around, if it just kept going, the orbit would be relatively flat, right? So you're looking at a reference frame, like kind of an isometric view, right? Orion's coming in like this, and then it's going to go up and over like that, and then come down that way instead of coming in this way. See what I'm saying? They're doing that slight. They're basically taking a left at Albuquerque right there. They're by doing what's called a. It's a coplanar normal burn. So if the craft is going this way, right? If it's going somewhat in line with the equator of the planet or celestial body that it's orbiting around, it's pointing at the North Pole. Engine's pointed South Pole and burning the engine. You're literally taking a left turn in space relative to where the spacecraft's going. That was a crappy diagram, but you get the idea. They basically want to come in a little bit. They want to come in north-south. It's better. You can get better timing that way. That stick figure looks really hurt. Nah, it's fine. Now, Bree, the burn's going to happen at 11:43. We should be going. We should be in calm blackout here relatively soon. Is there an estimate on how long the repairs will take? Wait, what's broken? Sounds broken. Most likely, sir. I'll bet it was something nice, though. That's a signal handover, guys. Don't worry about it.
This is Mission Control Houston. You're looking at a telemetry-driven animation of Orion as it travels at 4,000 miles per hour, closing in on the moon, now 4,131 miles away.
Yeah, friend, that did happen.
Orion is 234,940 miles away from home.
The Ligma module is not
Orion launched
correctly.
on November 16th and is in the 20th day of its 25-and-a-half-day historic test flight mission. Orion is an uncrewed test flight, but is performing critical checkouts of its systems ahead of a crewed test flight as part of Artemis 2.
Hypersonic.
Throughout this mission, Orion has completed several milestones, including flying behind the moon once already as part of the outbound powered flyby. During that, a burn took place, which put Orion in a trajectory to head out to deep space. The distant retrograde orbit burn also occurred, which further propelled Orion into that trajectory. And Orion remained in deep space for about 6 days and broke the distance record during that time frame for the farthest distance from Earth traveled by a human-rated spacecraft meant to return home.
I can tell you about that in a second, Canadian.
Orion, at its furthest point from Earth, was 268,563 miles away.
They're in signal handover right now. Give it a second, because the Earth is spinning.
Following that, Orion hung out in deep space for a little longer,
away, they have to
and just a few days ago we had the DRD burn, or distant retrograde departure burn.
That's cool.
This burn put Orion on a trajectory to head back towards the moon ahead of today's return-powered flyby burn. Today's burn is critical to ensure that Orion is on the proper trajectory to return back to Earth safely.
I'm just waiting, because the NASA PAOs do weird William Shatner pauses, they might be like, and now we're gonna do that. Wait for it. There we go. There's a good picture. So we had a signal handover there, guys. NASA is using the Deep Space Network. They are literally gigantic parabolic antennas that are on Earth. There's 3 of them kind of triangulated, 3 sets of them, I should say, triangulated. One of them is in Goldstone, California. The other one's in Madrid, Spain, and the other one is in Canberra, Australia. They have 30 meter dishes and 70 meter dishes. So you want to get that in feet if you don't know what that means. Like me, I have to back convert sometimes. The 30 meter dish is give or take about 100 feet wide. It's like 95. It's a 95-foot dish, and then the 70 meter one is a little over 200 feet. It's a dish that bigger than a football field. Yeah, bigger. That's what you need to communicate with something that far out. There's no tracking data and relay satellites out this far. There will be. Gateway is going to be the relay system for the Artemis program. But right now, they don't have that yet. So they're using the Deep Space Network. The thing is that when, if the Earth is spinning, right, if Madrid goes out of sight, right, and then Goldstone comes into view, you're going to get a little bit of a signal handover, which is why we saw the blue screen, right? Blue screen is not death. Don't worry. Not this time. Now, Canadian, in terms of velocity, you're looking at a localized velocity around the moon. So that's how fast it's orbiting around the moon right now. And it's going to keep accelerating here because we have a very, very close approach of what's called paraselene or paracynthian. That's a really, really cool sciencey way of saying that's the closest point when you get towards the moon. In orbital mechanics, you have an apoapsis and a periapsis around, like when you're in orbit around a celestial body. And the further, now AP and PE can be perfectly equal, more or less, and that means you're basically in a circular orbit. The further those get away from each other, you're changing the eccentricity of the orbit, so it'll become more elliptical. The distant retrograde orbit around the moon that Orion was in is a very, 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 very eccentric orbit. It's very eccentric. They did burn out of it. So right now they have an orbital eccentricity around the moon higher than 1. Basically, your eccentricity goes from 0 to 1, 0 being perfectly circular, 1 being escape. We're past 1 here because it's going to do a flyby and then shoot back towards Earth. They're just going to do a slight course correction to get good insertion for recovery. So as we approach the paraselene here, as we approach it, Orion will be accelerating, right? And then when you're at paraselene, your kinetic energy is maximized, so you're going the fastest, and your potential energy is minimized the most. Think about it like if you throw like a tennis ball up in the air. It'll have a lot of kinetic energy when it leaves your hand, and then when it hits the top of its trajectory, the apex, right? It'll have 0 kinetic energy for a second, and then it'll have maximum potential energy, and then it'll start speeding up again. Same exact idea here, but you're going fast enough to not when you come back down, you just fall around the planet and just keep going. So that 4,000 miles an hour that it's going is localized around the moon. If you wanted relative velocity, right? Well, what are you relative to? What are you relative to? So the Earth is orbiting around the sun at like 60,000 miles an hour or something. It's something like that. And then on top of that, there's a 17,500 mile an hour orbital velocity around Earth, and then on top of that, there's like a 5,000 mile velocity around the moon. You don't really measure it that way. It's really localized around whatever celestial body you're going around. That's really yeah. You wouldn't measure your Earth orbital velocity when you're around the moon. You know what I mean? Or solar orbital velocity when you're around the moon, which is around Earth. It doesn't really work that way. It's all relative. Yeah, there's no absolute velocity. You don't really do that way. What is the periapsis on the last powered flyby we watched? Is this one lower or higher? This one is lower, but this one's during the daylight. Hypersonic, this one's during the daylight. That's why the other one, the close approach on the outbound powered flyby was in the dark. This one is during the daytime on the moon. Is it moving? The solar panel's moving around a little bit, Kogao, but that's normal. The solar panels are kind of on springs. When will NASA integrate into full laser communication and ditch the dish network?
We are now 1 hour and 42 minutes and counting away from today's anticipated loss of signal as Orion flies behind the moon and performs the return-powered flyby burn, which will set us on a trajectory to return back to Earth and splash down in the Pacific Ocean on December 11th. But now as you can imagine, this moment can certainly be a bit suspenseful as we await Orion to emerge from the backside of the moon and regain communications with the Deep Space Network. So let's hear from one of the INCO flight controllers about how much that is the case in this next clip.
Shoreline.
During each mission to the moon, we'll have a period of time where the spacecraft goes behind the moon and we lose line of sight with the spacecraft from the DSN stations. That can be quite a nail-biting time. Usually we're executing an important maneuver or a burn during that time, and we have a predicted time when we should reacquire the signal, and so everybody is usually staring at that clock.
Yes, Jim.
As soon as the signal comes in-house, there's a sigh of relief, and we check to make sure that the burn executed correctly and that the spacecraft is in good health.
So again, we are anticipating that loss of signal to begin 1 hour and 41 minutes from now. Today's loss of signal will last 30 minutes in length, during which time Orion will complete its closest approach to the moon and just seconds later perform the return-powered flyby burn, which will last 3 minutes and 27 seconds and will change the velocity of the Orion spacecraft by 960 feet per second.
300 meters a second. Just in case anybody doesn't understand the foot units. So NASA's working on laser communication systems, but they're in a prototype right now. In terms of like a spacecraft with humans on board, you wouldn't screw around with a prototype system like that. But in the future, maybe. Any pics of what China is doing on the dark side of the moon? Yeah, they took pictures of what they were doing. The U2 rover. It's dead for what it's worth. It didn't last in the lunar nighttime. Lunar nighttime lasts 2 weeks, guys, because the moon is tidally locked. So what does that mean? It's one revolution per. The moon is spinning, but it's one revolution per orbit. So the moon kind of just appears to just be pointing at Earth the entire time. You might recognize what's pointing at us and what isn't from the basaltic regions here. The gray parts are the parts that are pointing towards us. So no, that's where the Decepticons hide. Yeah. So because of that, right, the moon takes give or take about a month to do one orbit. So nighttime can last 2 weeks. I mean, nothing is perfect, right? It can last 2 weeks, it lasts a week and a half, it lasts two and a half weeks. I mean, it really depends on where it is in its orbit. You don't get a full moon every 4 weeks on the dot. You know what I'm saying? It kind of changes because orbital mechanics is weird. Don't get me wrong, it's still pretty predictable, but. So, the U2 rover that was over, they're turning the solar panels. You getting sick yet? The U2 rover that was there and was working for about 2 weeks, and then it became nighttime, and it insta-froze it. Yeah, it broke after that. But they were taking pictures.
And Orion close enough to the lunar surface to leverage the moon's gravitational force and swing the spacecraft into a trajectory to return back to Earth. During Orion's
you can't see
mission,
the
it
alien
surpassed
stuff,
the
though,
furthest
sorry.
distance for a human-rated spacecraft meant to return home at over 268,000 miles from Earth at its furthest point.
Most of our measuring systems are arbitrary ways of measuring things, Jordis. That's the dirty secret. Months make no sense. Years don't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense.
Prior to the distant retrograde
A system
departure
literally
burn,
sometimes has
Orion was in
days
deep
in it and
space
sometimes
in a
it doesn't.
distant retrograde orbit. This orbit is called distant due to its high altitude from the moon. It's about 40,000 miles past the moon in its orbit. This orbit is 30,000 miles further than the previous record set during Apollo 13, and again is the furthest in space any spacecraft built for humans has ever flown. The orbit is also called retrograde because Orion traveled around the moon opposite the direction the moon travels around Earth. Distant retrograde orbit provides a highly stable orbit where
Oculus
little
CD1
fuel is
photo.
required to stay for an extended trip in deep space in order to put Orion's systems to the test in an environment far from Earth. The orbit that Orion completed in this mission is different from the orbit done during the Apollo program, in which the spacecraft orbited much closer to the lunar surface in a more
lunar
circular
surface.
fashion.
Boosters. Sorry.
It's important for us to learn about how a spacecraft functions in a deep space environment because as part of the Artemis program, the Gateway program is building a small human-tended space station orbiting the moon that will provide extensive capabilities to support NASA's Artemis campaign.
The lunatic surface. No,
Gateway
that's
will be
Earth.
built with international and commercial
See what
partnerships
I did there?
and will support sustained exploration and research in deep space, and will include docking ports for a variety of visiting spacecraft, as well as space for crew to live and work, and onboard science investigations to study heliophysics, human health, and life sciences, among other areas. Gateway will be humanity's first space station in lunar orbit to support NASA's deep space exploration plans. But before we get to that point, we are testing out the Orion spacecraft as part of the Artemis 1 mission. Again, we're 20 days into a 25-and-a-half-day mission.
Smoke? What's going on?
And
80
today's
miles,
return-powered flyby is the next major milestone in Orion's 25-and-a-half-day mission.
These Shatner pauses are killing me.
This burn will slingshot
Killing me.
Orion around the moon and place it on a trajectory to splash down in the Pacific Ocean on December 11th.
A little bit, Kane. Yeah, Greg, this thing is going to do about an 80-mile pass. It should be happening in about an hour and 30 minutes, give or take. Now I'm doing them. Ah, crap. No Shatner pauses. No Shatner pauses around the moon. Hello, pause, EJ, and chat. Zyvox, what's going on, man? So it's going to do about an 80-mile pass over the moon. That's about 125, 130 kilometers, somewhere in there. It's pretty damn close. That's really, really close. We're going to get some really nice pictures here. Now, don't get me wrong. There might be a loss of signal at the closest approach, which is going to kind of suck, but Orion will be taking pictures even when it's blocked out. Now, I know the next question I'm going to get, I know every time I mention it, somebody asks, well, why don't we just put a relay out there for the spacecraft? Gateway is going to be the relay around the moon, so we don't have this problem in the future. It's just this is the first mission. Other gateways wasn't planned to be ready by the first mission. Because why would you make a human-rated space station out there when you don't even have a human-rated capsule to get to it? You want to make sure the capsule works first, so you're going to have a signal blackout. Got to take baby steps. That's right. That's exactly what's going on, Jordis, yeah. And if you look out the left-hand window here, you'll be able to see the Sea of Tranquility. I wish they would splash down off the mid-Atlantic. Yeah. Yeah, that'd be nice.
We're now 1 hour and 35 minutes away from today's return-powered flyby burn. Orion is currently traveling at 4,157 miles per hour and is 3,529 miles away from the moon. Just prior to today's return power flyby burn, Orion will complete its closest approach to the moon.
Late 2024 is when the base components at Gateway are going to get working.
At closest approach, Orion will be 79 miles above the lunar surface.
Oh, 79 miles.
This
now.
closest approach, as well as the burn, will occur in our anticipated loss of signal period. That loss of signal slated to begin an hour and 32 minutes from now and will last 30 minutes long. The reason we will not have signal with the Orion spacecraft is because the moon is blocking the connection to the Deep Space Network during that time period. Again, today's LOS will be a 30-minute long loss of signal, but we are anticipating to regain communications with the Orion spacecraft once it comes around to the other side of the moon and is able to regain communications with the Deep Space Network.
Yeah, they need to deploy the mystery goo.
At that point, flight controllers here in Mission Control Houston will be able to analyze today's 3-minute and 27-second return power flyby and make sure everything performed as expected.
Yeah, Joe, it's pretty sweet. We need to build antennas around the moon. I told you guys. Told you someone would say it. Gateway is that, TT. Yeah. Gateway is going to do exactly what you're saying. They will. The spacecraft wobble is very KSP-like. Yeah, it happens. Moon's getting awfully close. Lunar Starlink when? Oh, boy. Oh, boy. Maverick, It's not as easy as just have you tried just making a lunar Starlink? It's a little bit more complicated than that. Do you know how close we actually get? Like how many kilometers off the moon's surface? About 120. It's between 120 and 130. They said 80 before, but now Sandra just said 79. So 79 miles.
If you're just joining us this morning, we are bringing you live coverage of today's return-powered flyby of the Orion spacecraft, an uncrewed test flight as part of the Artemis program. Today is flight day 20 for Orion, and there are about 5.5 days left in this test flight mission.
Could they put towers on the
Leading
actual
up
moon
to
surface
this
to
event
enable relays?
Today, the return-powered flyby,
Sure.
there have been several other key milestones that Orion has reached. So let's take a look back at the past 20 days.
Yes, let's.
First up, we have the Space Launch System
That was a good
launching
day.
from Pad 39B at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida with its sights set on the moon. SLS blasted off at 12:47 a.m.
Blast
Central
off.
on November 16th. And here you see those 4 RS-25 engines lighting up the Florida sky. You can also see the orange core stage as well as one of the 2 solid rocket boosters in this view. On the very top of the vehicle is the launch abort system and, of course, the Orion spacecraft, which is now closing in on the moon ahead of today's return-powered flyby burn. Now, in this video, you have a launch
I
from
know what
the
you mean, rocket
perspective
guy.
of a camera located on the Space Launch System rocket. This video shows SLS and Orion's climb to orbit.
Yo.
It was about an 8.5-minute climb to orbit. You can see the rocket soaring over the launch pad.
That's awesome. Ready? Thunk.
Following liftoff and the climb to orbit, the translunar injection burn took place.
Kerbal noises you can hear.
The translunar injection maneuver took place as the upper part of the rocket, officially named the Interim Cryogenic Propulsion Stage, fired one RL-10
Maybe, man.
engine, producing 24,750 pounds of thrust to accelerate the vehicle to more than 22,600 miles per hour, which is a velocity fast enough to overcome the pull of Earth's gravity and propel Orion out of low Earth orbit to send the spacecraft to the moon. The translunar injection maneuver precisely targeted a point on the moon that helped guide Orion close enough to be captured by the moon's gravity. And right after the TLI burn, the interim cryogenic propulsion stage separated from the Orion spacecraft, which you did see in this video here. You see it floating away in the distance. Later that day, we received our first imagery of Earth, as well as completed the first checkout of the Orbital Maneuvering System, or OMS engine, which all went smoothly. Orion was officially on the way to the moon. And then several days later, on November 21st, Orion performed the outbound powered flyby, also with the Orbital Maneuvering Engine, rather. The outbound powered flyby is the sister to the return powered flyby, which will occur today. The outbound powered flyby, as the name suggests, takes place on the outbound portion of the trip, whereas the return powered flyby takes place on the return journey, as Orion is anticipating its return home. In this video here, you can see the Orion spacecraft, as well as the Earth in the distance and the moon off to the left. This was just before Orion flew behind the moon as part of that outbound powered flyby.
This is getting out of hand. Now there are two of them.
After this, Orion was placed in a deep space trajectory where it completed a distant retrograde orbit.
Deep space trajectory.
During that time frame, Orion traveled the furthest distance than any human-rated spacecraft meant to return back to Earth had ever traveled. And in this photo here, you see Orion take a photo of planet Earth from over 268,000 miles away.
That's nice. I like that. That's pretty cool. The moon is bigger than Earth. Yeah, well,
and
it
in
appears to
this
be a little
photo
bit
here,
bigger
you
when
can
you're
see
closer to
Orion's
it
solar
than
rays
Earth.
split the difference between Earth and the moon on flight day 14 of the Artemis 1 mission. This imagery was captured by one of the cameras on the tip of one of the solar arrays, the spacecraft's 4 solar arrays. And just last week, on December 1st, the distant retrograde departure burn occurred, which placed Orion in a trajectory to exit the distant retrograde orbit and head back toward the moon ahead of the return-powered flyby, which we're looking forward today. In this view here, you can see the solar array flexing, as well as an Earth in the distance there, almost in the center of your screen. So it's been a busy journey for the Orion spacecraft.
Live view.
Again, we're on
Baby,
flight
look at
day
that.
20 of a 25.5-day test flight mission. Orion is now 3,238 miles away from the lunar surface.
Yeah, see? Stuff wobbles in real life.
And
George.
we
It
are
happens.
just 1 hour and 26 minutes away from today's outbound powered flyby burn, which will last 3 minutes and 27 seconds and place Orion in a trajectory to head
Good
back
question,
home.
Dan. Mark, don't tell them that. So this is a live shot right here. You can see the gray parts of the moon there. These darker gray parts here, those are the lunar lowlands. They are lunar basaltic regions. Those lowlands are where most of the Apollo missions landed. Now, it's kind of hard to get a reference here. Like, I'm not exactly sure where the North Pole of the moon is in this shot, but I do know that these basaltic regions on the moon, so the darker gray areas, are lower in altitude than well, they're lower in altitude than the highlands. Am I right? It's so funny how that works. That's where most of the Apollo missions landed. I think the monster
The
fish?
next major milestone that we are tracking this morning here from Mission Control Houston will take place in about an hour from now, when NASA Flight Director Judd Freeling will pull the team inside Mission Control for a go, no-go for today's burn.
There you go, Greg. Right on, man. But yeah, these spots, these lower basaltic regions, are where most of the Apollo missions landed. Orion, during this return powered flyby, will be flying over the Apollo sites. But the point it goes over the Apollo sites, it's going to be a good altitude above the moon, above the lunar surface. So you're not gonna be able to like see footprints. You know what I mean? Even at the close flyby, 79 miles, about like 125 kilometers off the surface, you still wouldn't be able to see them. Not with these cameras. One Space Taco Bell. You're that guy from Taco Bell. What if it's no-go for the burn? Yeah, you're gonna want to make sure that that's that the thing's good to go. But the system should be performing fine. Not should be, they are.
We're continuing to bring you live imagery of the lunar surface from the Orion spacecraft as it continues to close in. Orion is currently 3,091 miles away from the moon, traveling at a velocity of 4,238 miles per hour.
I don't know, Ren. I'm not sure what the status of that mission is. Biff, what's going on? Where are we at with Artemis 1? So Biff, Artemis 1 is doing a return-powered flyby today and a close approach on the close side of the moon. So I'm here for the pictures. I'm here for the pictures that we're going to get when this thing gets close, because they're going to be righteous. Okay. That's a little strange, Core. And I hope you show the landers when they get to the moon, as my brother doesn't think that it happened. Oh, that's a shame. Greg, you know what you should do? You know what you should do? You should go to your brother and say, well, I don't think your intestines exist because I can't see them. What is he going to do? Call him on himself? Oh, your intestines don't exist. I can't see your intestines, so they don't exist, right? I can't see them, so they don't exist. Obviously, well, I'm just being a healthy skeptic. I know my intestines exist, but I don't know if yours do. I don't think you have any intestines. I know, Greg. I know. Yeah, I don't think your brain exists either. You gonna show me? Sometimes being skeptical for the sake of being skeptical under the guise of virtue is not makes people look pretty stupid, don't you think? It'd be pretty stupid. What the heck do you know about science? You know nothing. How's your liver? Oh, alive and kicking. Alive anyway. You going back to your day off after this is done? Might. Maybe. My intestines are flat. Oh, God. Damn, sup. Yeah, endometric polyalloy, or this liquid metal. Yeah. If they decide not to burn today, is it Orion in a stable lunar orbit? I'm not, Dr. J, I'm not going to lie to you. I don't know what the contingency procedure is for it not working. I think it's use the secondary thrusters and do a little bit of a longer duration burn. I think that's the contingency. Orion has redundant thrusters. They have 3 sets of thrusters that they could do this with.
Discovery, go at
There's your orbiter maneuvering engine. That's the shuttle motor that's built in, that they put in the service module. It's on the left of your screen. You can't see it. If that doesn't work, they'll use the secondary thrusters. That's a cluster of 8 thrusters that's used for small incremental thrust adjustments. And if those don't work, then you'll use the RCS, which is right there. I'm pretty sure that's the contingency, guys. They have a triple redundant system. But that's a guess. That's a guess. Yeah, nice. Linkler, 60 months. That's a lot of cheese. Hey, if the moon was made out of cheese, would you eat it? Hey, Ren, thanks for the bits. Just curious, about how big is the recovery zone on Earth? It's in the Pacific Ocean, about 100 miles off the coast of Los Angeles or San Diego. You know, San Diego. It was discovered by the Germans in 1904. Oh, they're rocking the solar panels around. Driz, I don't see a last from you.
If you're just joining us this morning, we are 1 hour and 18 minutes away from today's outbound powered flyby burn. This burn will be 3 minutes and 27 seconds long and will propel Orion around the moon in anticipation of a splashdown off the coast of California on December 11th.
Well, that's...
Leading the team here in Mission Control Houston during today's burn is NASA Flight Director Judd Freeling. But Judd is not the only flight director here at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas, that is working the Artemis mission. So let's take a look at a few of the other flight directors.
I don't want to. I want to keep looking at
Flight
Sandra.
CTO,
Don't.
Buddy, come for cooling.
Damn it!
Monaco AOS, good for Pepe.
Flight controllers generally focus
Pepe.
on subsystems of the vehicle, and they're more in tune with the detailed workings of their particular system that they're responsible for.
Feels good, man.
Flight directors, on the other hand, are more in tune with what is the integration between all of the subsystems. What are we all marching towards? What's our mission objective?
Prop flight has the RCS
No hat changes.
together with the regs.
Overridden.
Really, your training starts when you become a flight controller. You know, you learn a lot by osmosis, and you kind of get a sense of a little bit of the job. But once you become a flight director, the amount of learning you do is exponential.
You don't become an expert, but you have to understand them at a depth where you could have the good conversation, ask the right questions to the experts who are the flight controllers. You spend a lot of time studying and then training, getting in simulations and running through all the motions and practicing the real-time situation scenarios in the training environment.
I am the ascent and entry flight director for Artemis 1. I will take responsibility of the vehicle after it launches. I'll also be the entry flight director, so once we come back to Earth, I'll have a team that will monitor and control the vehicle once it splashes down, and we hand that over to Melissa Jones, who is the NASA recovery director.
Splashdown.
Touchdown verify. Copy.
I'm the lead flight director for the mission, really responsible for the overall development of the mission. We work directly with the programs They provide us the mission priorities, and we build a timeline that's going to accomplish those mission objectives. We're responsible for building our team, getting our team trained and certified. We have a training team that helps us, but we have the overall responsibility for putting together the team that's going to execute the mission.
Confirmation of translunar injection burn cutoff.
When you go to a place like the moon or Mars, you really have to be explorers. It pushes the boundaries of civilization.
We are having to develop new technology that's going to have to sustain the astronauts for these very, very long trips. And it just makes sense to test that and go into the moon where you're in a similar environment, but you're much closer. And in the event of an emergency type scenario, we can bring them safely back home.
Station, this is Houston.
We've had a lot of experience now in low Earth orbit, over 50, 60 years of experience.
I want that
and
one.
We've learned how to do that
Give me that
pretty
one.
well. We've learned what the effects of the body are in low Earth
I want
orbit,
that one.
but there's still things that we need to practice, and we need to be able to understand how you sustain life further and further and further away from our planet.
It's just so different from everything you learn when you do low Earth orbit. And that's what's making it so much fun.
Yeah.
I'm every bit as excited about this mission as I was the first day I walked in the doors of Mission Control.
Orion continuing to close in on the moon, now 2,774 miles away, traveling at a velocity of 4,300 miles per hour.
At 4,000 at 300? What? Oh, hey. See, there's your redundant thrusters.
And you are looking at a view of the bottom of the European space.
It's the ESM, European Service Module.
You are looking at a view of the European Service Module, the very bottom of it there. And you are seeing the large engine there in the center of the
Hey, stop
European
staring at
Service
his
Module.
butt,
That's
chat.
the orbital maneuvering system
What the heck?
engine.
Avert
or
your
OMS
eyes.
engine. That's the engine that will be
Jeez.
utilized during today's return power flyby burn. This is the main engine on the European Service Module and is a repurposed Space Shuttle Orbital Maneuvering System engine that has flown in space 19 times before, all on Space Shuttle flights, beginning with STS-41G in October 1984 and ending with STS-112 in October 2002.
Yeah. See that engine
We
in the
are
center?
now 1 hour
Flew on
and 13
Challenger.
minutes away from today's return-powered flyby burn.
Seriously.
That burn will last 3 minutes and 27 seconds, and will change the velocity of the Orion spacecraft by 960 feet per second.
That engine was used during the shuttle program. Yep, from 1984 to 2002. It flew on 41G, so that's
You're also
Challenger.
getting a great view of
It's one
the
of Challenger's
auxiliary
orbital maneuvering
engines on Orion.
Yeah. And that's going to burn up in the atmosphere. Yeah.
And again, Orion continues to close in on the moon, now only 2,680 miles away from the lunar surface. Following today's closest approach to the moon, Orion will be only 79.2 miles above the lunar surface.
Yeah, look, they're moving the solar panels. So the solar panels on this thing can actually Naruto run. They go backwards and they can go forwards like this. The reason why is to like when they fire the engines, they don't want the solar panels like flapping around. So they're on like motor servos that can put them back, and when see there it goes. So you can see them working right there. It'll Naruto run around. Yeah, for the anime fans out there. That's to make sure that they don't break when you go to fire them. No, Creeper, those engines were not recovered, to my knowledge. I guess, Nova, yeah. If they aren't Merlin engines, I don't want them. Well, Mark, if you were on your capsule and your capsule had a Merlin engine on it and it was up there for 2 weeks, you'd be dead because you're not getting home. all your propellants would have boiled off. There's a reason why they use shuttle motors, and there's a reason why the European service module is derived from the automated transfer vehicle. The type of propellants that they're using are propellants that are, if I told you the names, you'd probably be like, that sounds bad for you. Yeah, it's because they are, but they stay stable. They stay stable. They don't decompose in space. They stay as liquid for a long period of time because chemical. The propellants that the reaction control system, the orbiter maneuvering engine is using, and those smaller engines on the back, it's using monomethyl hydrazine and nitrogen tetroxide. The reason why we use those is because they stay stable. If you were using a Merlin engine here, your kerosene would be fine. Kerosene stays kerosene for a long time, but your liquid oxygen would have boiled off by now. You would have no oxidizer. You would just have a lot of kerosene and no way to burn it. I wouldn't be using a turbine-driven engine up here. Rocket guy, I don't think that's a good idea at all. Hey, Shinar, what time will the burn happen? About an hour, give or take? Rocky, yeah, you said it wouldn't boil off, but LOX is space storable, but Merlin does present a large additional fault modes being a turbine-driven sim. Yeah, I wouldn't do that. It's too complicated for a space engine, man. Why is Lunar Starship using LOX and methane if it will boil off? Nova Raptor, SpaceX is trying to solve the boil-off problems right now. Yeah, Greg. Trying. Sometimes I get stuff wrong, you know, but hey, trying to get there. I mean, what SpaceX is going to try to do with Starship is they have a fuel tank inside of the fuel tank. So basically, the outer fuel tank will act as a huge insulator for the inner fuel tank. And you know, if you keep the temperature right, you can prevent the boil off. But yeah, I wouldn't do that on a spacecraft like this. The hypergolic propellants are the good ones. That's what you'd want to use for now, at least, until something else is proven.
We're now 1 hour and 8 minutes away from today's return-powered flyby burn. Everything continuing to move smoothly here in Mission Control Houston. As a reminder, we will lose signal when Orion crosses behind the moon. That's because the moon will be blocking the signal to the Deep Space Network. We are anticipating that loss of signal 1 hour and 5 minutes from now. That will be a 30-minute loss of signal.
I love refrigerators. No, right.
During this loss of signal period is when Orion will complete the return-powered flyby burn, that 3-minute and 27-second burn that will send Orion on a trajectory to head back home ahead of a splashdown in the Pacific Ocean on December 11th.
So, Dogmeat, what did you ask? Am I dumb or is a turbine drive not possible in vacuum? Yeah, but a turbine, I mean, if you're thinking about it in terms of a turbojet, yeah, you have no oxidizer. If you're trying to pull from the atmosphere and you go into space where there's no atmosphere, your jet engine is not going to work very well. Funny how that works. When we're talking about a turbine-driven engine, we're talking about an engine that's actuated by a gas generator. So basically, you have a gas generator that's taking liquid oxygen and let's just say kerosene, because we're talking about Merlin engines. Instead of having an intake that pulls an atmosphere, you just have liquid oxygen and kerosene exploding with a gas generator.
And if you are just joining us this morning, we are...
And spinning a turbine wheel. So yeah, of course turbines work in space. You just got to give them an explosion to turn.
Around the moon in a trajectory to head back to Earth and a splashdown on December 11th. But we have been getting some beautiful views of the moon, and I have a very special guest with me this morning. This is Juliana Gross. She's the Deputy Apollo Curator, and she's going to point out some of these amazing features that we have been seeing on the lunar surface in some of the shots that we have been getting. So thank you so much for joining. I really appreciate you taking the time.
You're very welcome. I'm very excited to be here.
Yes, absolutely. So can you talk a little bit about some of the features that we are seeing on the lunar surface here?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you look on the moon right now to the left middle area of the moon there, the bright spot that you see there, that's Copernicus crater. The dark region that is sort of like right in front in the middle center of the moon right now, that's the Imbrium basin. And so these are impact features that we have on the moon. So when the moon formed throughout its history, over its 4.5 billion years, has been bombarded by meteorites and asteroids. And for the Imbrium, that's the darker round area that you can see there, what happened is there's a massive crater, and so we call these a basin, and melt from the interior of the moon came up through cracks and then filled that basin crater. And you can imagine that as a big lava lake, and then it cooled to form basalt. The same thing happens at the moment on Earth. Hawaii is erupting, and that brings up basalt from the interior of Earth. So these basalt samples, when we analyze them and we look at these, we can learn something about the interior of the moon. I see that we lost our actual live view, but in this beautiful view that we can see here, you can really nicely see Copernicus. Right in the center, and that's brighter because it excavates crustal material, which is white or bright, compared to the mare, which are basalt, which is dark. There we are back. So Copernicus is now in the lower right corner of that image. That's a fairly young crater, and that's why it still appears fairly bright, because over time, when the sun interacts with lunar rocks, it darkens over time. So we call that space weathering. Yeah.
And so we are flying fairly close to some of the Apollo landing sites now. We're a little too high above. We're about 2,000 miles away from the moon still to make out any features. But can you talk about a little bit about what the Apollo program studied in those landing zones, and maybe touch on how Artemis is going to be different, because we're going to be landing in an entirely different spot, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Apollo wasn't so much about science. It was more about like, hey, we're actually going to the moon and we can do it, and like the technology to show that we can do it. Apollo 14 and 12 sort of landed near Copernicus, like south of where Copernicus crater is right now that I pointed out in that region. And so Apollo 14 landed there in 1971, right above the Framora region, which is kind of like south of Copernicus, and it's right at the edge of that big Imbrium basin that I talked about. They brought back a lot of rocks. They were interested in the rocks that were excavated from Imbrium, so that's a lot of impact melt, as we call them, or breccias. And every time a rock gets exposed to like heat and pressure and started to remelt in like an impact event like that, it resets the internal clock. So when rocks form, they record the condition from which they formed, including the age, like the time when they formed. But every time there's an impact event and it gets remelted, that internal clock resets. Now we can take these rocks and then measure the ages of them. And so every time the clock got reset, we now have the age of that impact event. And so we want to know when Imbrium formed, because it's such a big event that happened on the moon, that we can put everything else in relative age to each other. So that why that mission was important. Apollo 12 landed in the Oceanus Procellarum region, which is sort of to the lower left and then going up. It's kind of like where that shaded, like where you kind of stop seeing the moon, you know, the boundary of the shade and the sunlight lit area. The little bright spot that comes up on the, lower left third of the moon, that is Aristarchus crater. So that's a super bright crater in that Procellarum region, which we're now seeing more and more of. So that's sort of the area where Apollo 12 landed. That landing was to sort of show that we can do a pinpoint landing. So they landed 200 meters away from the Surveyor 3 lander, and they actually brought a piece from Surveyor 3 back to Earth to like really show. And that paved the way for future missions to like really like, hey, we can do a pinpoint landing. So we can go to like a more difficult terrain where we can land, where it's more ruggedy. And so that's where we went there. And so now you can see even more of the Procellarum region. Most of that is dark gray, as you can see, and so these are the basalts.
Check this out, guys.
That mission brought back a lot of these basaltic materials. And then we can look at the ages, and it turns out that those basalts were very different, and they were younger than the Apollo 11 mission, than the rocks that they brought back, the basalts that they brought back. Now, Artemis is going to be super exciting because we're going to a very different region. So if you look at the surface here, and you can see that's mostly dark gray, so it's mostly basalts. You can see in the upper part of the moon that's still bright. That's what we call the highland crust. So that's the very old crust. So when the moon formed, there was a giant impact between two protoplanets. It collided, created a lot of heat, everything melted. The center part formed and became Earth. And then the debris cloud that surrounded it coalesced and then became the moon. So once upon a time, the moon was covered in a global magma ocean. So it was fully molten, right? And if you have a global magma ocean, you start crystallizing things. So now when you crystallize stuff that is denser than the melt, that sinks, right? And if you crystallize things that are less dense than the melt, that starts to float, like ice is floating on water, right? And so now we have these crystals crystallizing these minerals, and they are less dense, so they float to the surface and they build the crust. These crystals are called plagioclase. They're white. And so your crust that then forms on the moon is white. And that's why the moon looks so bright when you look at this image or in the night sky, because that's the old crust of, the oldest rocks we have, and they're white in color. And so that's why this is so bright. Now the near side, so the side that we see right now, we see these dark patches, which then are the younger basalts that came to the surface once you start impacting it, and you take stuff away, you made these big basins, and then the interior remelts, and that melt comes up to form to fill these craters. That's very special. So it turns out that this Procellarum region, where Imbrium sits in, where Apollo 12 landed, where Apollo 14 landed, all these rocks that were brought back,
Greg, you're not you when you're hungry.
Have a weird component that we call creep. And it's spelled Kreep, and it stands for potassium, rare earth elements, and phosphor. That entire Mars regions that you can see here is also has iron in it, lots of iron and lots of titanium. But the rest of the moon doesn't really have that. Right. And so geologically speaking, all the Apollo rocks are really, really cool because they're very special. Right? So if I would give you 6 missions and you land them on Earth and you land them all in Yellowstone National Park, and you collect all your rocks, right? You get, geologically speaking, really interesting rocks, but they're not representative for the United States or the rest of the world, right? So same happens with Apollo. Really cool rocks, geologically speaking, very interesting, lots of basalts, right? They all have this weird creep component, so they're all creepy. But the rest of the moon is very different, so they're not representative. Now with Artemis, we're going to go to the South Polar region. So that region is more representative compared to Apollo. We don't really expect a lot of basalts there, so that's more like highland region. The South Polar region also has the largest impact basin that we have on the moon, and also the oldest. So if we can bring back rocks from there, we can hopefully date that really, really old impact region, and then get a better idea of when things happened on the moon and establish a timeline. Now we also know that the polar regions are really, really cold. And so ices or volatiles and gases on the moon, they freeze out in the polar region. So when we go there and collect rocks, we can also bring back these frozen samples and then learn something about where the water is coming from, whether it's moon or, there was lots of asteroids and comets that impacted the moon. And then so we can also learn about something about the water that was delivered to the Earth-Moon system, which most likely also ended up on Earth. And so we can learn something about our own history and how the moon
Nice,
formed and
man.
evolved over time better than we can with Apollo. We're missing a lot of rocks and processes with Apollo, and hopefully we can fill these gaps with Artemis.
Okay.
You are a wealth of knowledge. Thank you so much for sharing all of that information. Now, as we continue to get closer and closer to the lunar surface, of course, these features are going to become more and more clear. Orion is now 2,000 miles away from the moon, but at closest approach today, it will be just about 80 miles above the lunar surface. So before you go for the day, it looks like we are starting to get some better views of that area that you were discussing before. Is there any other items or areas that have come into view since we've been chit-chatting that you think would be helpful to point out?
Yeah, so we see Kepler crater, which is sort of to the left and lower left of Copernicus, what I just pointed out. So it's this like grayish area with the little dot in the center. And then if you go from there further to the left, right at where the moon's shades are, so there's still a little lower left, that really bright area, that's Aristarchus crater. And that's a really young crater, and it's really bright because it brought up material from that crust that I said, and that's this white rock. It turns out we have orbital reflectance data. So when we look at the light, the sunlight that gets reflected off the surface, we can make assumptions about the chemistry in that region. And it turns out that region is geologically speaking really, really complicated. So it brought back up old crustal material, but we also see some basaltic material. And in the central peak, we see material that is silicic, so it's really, really high in silica, and that usually means there's some kind of evolved rock. And when we say evolved, on Earth, that usually means like granites and stuff like that. We don't really mean it that way here, but it has more silica content in it. When I say central peak, so what happens when you have a big impact into the crust rebounds and brings a central part comes up. If you think about it, throwing a rock into water, right, it makes a splash, and then the water rebounds and brings a kind of like a central thing up and then plops back down. So if you would freeze that water, it would stand up in the center. So that happens on the moon or on Earth as well, where like the crust rebounds. And so the central peak is the area that is the deepest material that got brought back to the surface. So that is of importance and special interest to scientists, because now we have another window into the interior of the moon to study these things. And it turns out, specifically for that little bright crater there, it's super complicated, and then we're still trying to figure out what we are seeing.
So it sounds like there's definitely much to be learned from the moon, especially through the Artemis program, and I'm sure you're looking forward to getting some of those samples back to be able to study in depth.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Juliana, for taking time out of your day to chat with us. I really appreciate it. I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Daisies,
thank you so much, and thank you for having me. This is fantastic.
The sun burns things. Some of the so they're keeping the butt end of the spacecraft facing towards the sun for better thermal. They put the heat shield between where the humans are going to be and where the sun is, right? And then the service module too. So it's not dust that's burning or like accumulating here. It's burned. The material is burned. Some of the thermal protection system on the back of the capsule is a little burned up. Yeah, that's just from the sun. Think about it like if you've ever seen cars that are in areas that get a lot of sunlight, the paint burns off the car. Same idea. It's just getting a tan. There you go. Hey, Greg, 10-month resub. There you go. That was really cool. But yeah, the Apollo landing sites are like up here. They're over this way. If you had an old Nintendo, or an old computer from the 80s, the plastic is like it was like beige, and now it's like orangey almost. Same idea. So technically, in 1,000 years, would it be completely dark? It would melt it. It would melt it hypersonic. Just yeah, it would melt. Yeah. I also assume that the service module and the heat shield kind of protect the astronauts from radiation. Yeah, you want to put as much stuff between you and the sun as possible, Thrawn, when you're up in space. Yeah, more or less. It really depends on what the heat shield and everything is made out of, but yeah, it'll block most things. Although I doubt they made a service module out of Nintendo plastic. I mean, no. Nintendo's Japanese, and that's a European service module.
We're now
so
50 minutes away from today's return-powered flyby burn.
Sorry.
This burn will slingshot Orion around the lunar surface and put it in a trajectory ahead of a splashdown on December 11th back on Earth.
This is why I'm live today, dudes. Look at that picture.
This burn will be a 3-minute and 27-second long burn and will be the longest burn of the mission utilizing the Orbital Maneuvering System, or OMS engine. You are getting a view of the OMS engine on your screen. It's in the very top left, the largest engine on your screen.
When Kerbal, there's a spacecraft doing a lunar transit right now, and you're worrying about a video game. That's nice. Well, I know the lunar transit is now. You would have fooled me. You would have fooled me.
The next major milestone that we're tracking here in Mission Control Houston is the
Listen,
Go, No-Go poll. During this poll, NASA Flight Director Judd Freeling will go around the room and poll each of the flight console positions to ensure that all is looking good ahead of today's burn.
They're not burning at all right now, Jim. Capsule's free floating. They're doing some slight corrections with the RCS every once in a while, but
Orion is now less
Disagree,
than
RJ.
2,000 miles away from the moon, 1,756 miles, moving
It's out of
at
sight.
a velocity of 4,563 miles per hour.
there'll be a moon in the way, Jonas. We won't be able to
At
see
this
the
time,
RPF.
Orion is over 237,000 miles away from Earth.
No, Sile, not until the capsule gets back and they recover the footage. Do you know how many gyros are on Orion? Not sure, Ren. Well, we see the engine nozzle when they're firing it. It will be out of sight because of the stowed position of the solar panels. Nah, I mean the camera that's mounted on the solar panel. You should be able to see it. I mean, we're waiting for it, NSS. The no-go poll is going right now. NASA, in typical NASA form, is not going to broadcast it because, you know. Will we see the footprints on the moon? Too far away, Jen. How close is it to the moon at the moment? 2,000 miles, RJ? 32,000 or 3,200 kilometers, excuse me. And this percentage, do you know what percentage of the theoretical path? Obviously, they're close, but how close? It's all in a nominal window, Canadian. The accuracy of that is, they're not going to tell us that. They don't want to tell people how accurate the systems are, but they're good enough. You're pretty damn close. We did hear a little bit about that with SLS insertion. If you really want to know, the Artemis 1 SLS insertion was 99.9% accurate. empirically. Yeah, pretty crazy. Not bad for oh, it's using 30-year-old technology. Oh, why we're using X shuttle part? Yeah. 99.9% accurate. Yeah, it's because they're pretty good. Yeah. I wish we could see the moon rover trail that they left. The Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, guys, has imaged Apollo landing sites many times. You can go find these pictures on images.nasa.gov. They're all over the place. I want to know what nominal is for NASA. Yeah. Oh, signal handover. Greg, I will slap you. Greg, you're not you when you're hungry. Here. Come on. Have the food of your people. Okay. Well, for orbital insertion, Rocket Guy. Orbital insertion. So, they were aiming for a 975 nautical mile by 20 nautical mile orbit, and they got 972 by 20, which is really, really good. Yeah, that's really good. Will all the Orions have the red worm logo? Oh, I hope so. Where did you get Tim Tams from? Greg, I believe it or not, I found them in a random store in Michigan. We had an American holiday last week, Thanksgiving, which means nothing to you. It's just, Thanksgiving is like Christmas without presents, basically. It's just Christmas where you go and gather, give thanks for what you have, right? So we were celebrating that, and I was at some random, we went to see Brimo's family in Michigan, right? It's like, I don't know, like 1,400 Ks away, and I found, time to wake up. I found him at a random store. Found him at a random store in Michigan. I was like, I'm not gonna not take these, so I bought a couple. Oh yeah, the world's largest Christmas store. Oh, they're turning the capsule. Oh.
And if you're just joining us, Orion is now 1,550 miles away from the moon. We are anticipating today's return powered flyby burn to begin 43 minutes from now. This burn will last 3 minutes and 27 seconds.
Oh, look at that.
During the time period that the burn takes place, Orion will be in a loss of signal period because it will be directly behind the moon, and the moon will be blocking the signal with the deep space network. Today's loss of signal will last for 30 minutes. After we come back around to the other side of the moon, we anticipate regaining communications with the Orion spacecraft, and that's when the team here in Mission Control will be able to analyze the return-powered flyby burn and make sure everything went as expected.
Been on the way back for a little while, Alucard.
This burn is critical as we look ahead to a return and splashdown of the Orion spacecraft on December 11th. Today's burn will put us in a trajectory to enable that splashdown.
RCS Jordis. Reaction wheels are not nearly as strong as they are in KSP in real life. They're really only good for keeping you on a course point. You can use them to move, but it wouldn't be that quick of a move. You know what I mean? Oh, man. What a shot. Now, flight controllers are reorienting the craft for the RPF, it looks like. See those dark gray areas? Those are the lunar lowlands. They're the lunar basaltic regions. That's where the Apollo missions went. Those gray areas. Now, it's... Oh, look at the solar panels turning. Oh, that's freaking sick.
And on your screen right now,
don't
you
hate
are
that.
seeing some movement here.
I
This
don't
is taking
hate
place
that.
as the solar array wings get into the right configuration ahead of today's burn.
That's pretty neat.
A great view of the Orbital Maneuvering System engine, or OMS engine, coming into view on the European Service Module. That's that large engine on the very bottom of the European Service Module, and is the engine that will be used during today's 3-minute and 27-second burn. Again, this will be the longest burn done by the OMS engine so far, but the OMS engine can actually fire for up to 16 minutes if necessary.
Right, So how does the ISS rotation work? I know the cupola always faces the Earth.
You're also getting a view of the 8 auxiliary engines on Orion. These engines can fire for less than 1 minute, up to 45 minutes in length. And these engines are used more for trajectory corrections.
What are the little engines for? Trajectory
Each
corrections.
engine provides about 100 pounds of thrust and can provide steering during burns by pulsing on and off.
Yeah, shuttle engines at the moon. Never thought I'd see that. So RJ, how does the ISS work? So the ISS is basically rotating. Think of it doing one rotation. It does one rotation per orbit, so it appears to kind of just be always facing in the same direction. The reaction wheels are there to make sure that it's persistently flipping end over end. Does that make sense? But it flipping end over end makes it seem like it's always parallel to the surface. Like I said, reaction wheels are not nearly as powerful in real life as they are in KSP. In KSP, they're ridiculous. They are ridiculously overpowered. But that's for gameplay purposes, guys. How many shuttle OMS engines do we have left? 6.
Orion continuing to get in a
Well,
proper
5 on
orientation
Earth,
ahead of today's
1 in
burn.
space.
We are tracking that burn 38 minutes from now. And again, during that burn, we will lose signal with the Orion spacecraft.
It is
The
using
loss
RCS,
of signal
yes.
will be 36 minutes from now.
Yeah, what Prey said. These reorientation views are pretty sweet, except for that one. They got a signal hand over there.
You're looking at a view from our data-driven animation of the Orion spacecraft. As you can see, we're now 1,317 miles away from the moon. Orion moving at over 4,700 miles per hour.
Are these shot with a direct
At this
line
time,
of sight?
Orion is over 238,000 miles
What do you mean,
away from
Hendo?
Earth.
How many shuttle RS-25s do we have left? I think there's 8 more, I think. Hando, if you mean, like, is Orion in direct line of sight with Earth? Yes. There's no in-space relay that's powerful enough to get this far, to transmit this far. They're using the Deep Space Network, which is a cluster of 30-meter and 70-meter antennas that are in various spots around Earth to get a signal from the spacecraft. There's no satellite in between. Nope. Now, here's the thing. They could send a NASA could send a signal through their tracking data and relay system from one TDRS to another deep space network and then shoot it out, so they could go DSN to TDRS to DSN
Everything
back
continuing
if they
to
really
move
wanted
smoothly
to.
this morning as we anticipate the return-powered flyby burn 36 minutes from now.
If you start building spacecraft on orbit, it will change everything. Won't need to be designed for Earth at all. Yeah.
We are hearing that the Orion spacecraft is now in the proper attitude ahead of today's burn.
How are you going to get the parts up there? You're still beholden to launching stuff into space. Now, if we could, like, build a shipyard on the moon or something,
you can see that orbital maneuvering system engine on the left of your screen, that large engine on the European service module. That's the engine that will be utilized during today's burn.
They're
also see 2 of the auxiliary engines, as well as 2 of the solar arrays.
They're derived from the European automated transfer.
On the tip of the solar arrays, on the wings of the solar arrays, are the SAW, or solar array wing cameras. Those are the cameras which are capturing the imagery that you see right now on your screen.
We do have LRO and Capstone that can relay west. Okay, but I don't think that's strong enough either. No, they're not. They're not strong enough at all to relay a signal. Yeah, there you go, Ardezzo. Jonas, I'm gonna slap you. I'm gonna slap you. Just whoosh. I challenge you to a duel. Whoosh. Yeah, Elman, I don't hate what's going on right now. It's a pretty awesome view. Why is the light different? On the camera that we saw a second ago, Quattro John, it was on the side of the spacecraft that was being illuminated by the sun, so the exposure was a little bit different. This, you're getting a little bit of a clearer picture here, because this camera has the spacecraft eclipsing it, so you get a little bit of a different shot. The exposure on the camera changes a little bit. You guys got to remember, these cameras aren't some sophisticated optics. They literally have 4 GoPros that are glued to the outside of the solar panels. Okay, it's a little more complicated than that, but they're straight up 4 there's GoPros. This is a GoPro shot. It's offset. The engine is just hanging there. Yep.
Orion continuing to close in on the moon, now 1,100 miles above the surface of the moon. During today's closest approach, Orion will be just 80 miles above the surface of the moon.
I'm pretty sure they will, Vega, yeah. Top right by the NASA Live logo. Look at the crater.
Here in just a couple of minutes, we do expect NASA Flight Director Judd Freeling to give a go, no-go poll for today's return-powered flyby burn.
Use what works.
If the team polls go, then we are anticipating the burn to begin at 10:43 a.m. Central and last 3 minutes and 27 seconds.
You would think they would use 4K GoPros and not Hero 5.
This burn will
1080p.
slingshot us around the moon and get Orion into a trajectory to return back to Earth and splash down off the coast of California.
What Jazzo said. But, I mean, yeah, so see what Jazzo said right below you.
While Orion is behind the moon today, we will not have communication with the vehicle because the moon will be blocking the connection to the deep space network. However, once Orion swings back around on the other side of the moon and regains communications with the deep space network, we do anticipate to be able to communicate with the vehicle. Today's loss of signal is slated to last 30 minutes.
Yeah, it's going to be soon, Ren. Yep.
And at this time period, we are now 1 hour away from. We are now 29 minutes away from the loss of signal and about an hour away from the acquisition of signal.
So we should have loss of signal here in a half hour. The return powered flyby is going to happen during the loss of signal. Yeah, look at that shot. Yeah, that shot's pretty good, Zay. Where are the devices of the Deep Space Network located? There's three locations around the Earth. It's triangulated, more or less, Jen. It's not exact, but the three locations are Goldstone, California, Madrid, Spain, and Canberra, Australia.
If you're just joining us this morning, we are bringing you live coverage of today's return-powered flyby of the Orion spacecraft, which is now 20 days into its 25-and-a-half-day test flight. While
I think so,
this
Jen,
Orion spacecraft is uncrewed as part of Artemis 2, we will have crew on board Artemis 2.
You can do distant retrograde in KSP, RJ. Yep.
Today's return-powered flyby will begin at 10:43 a.m. Central and will last 3 minutes and 27 seconds.
Yeah, the return-powered
This burn
flyby
will slingshot Orion around the backside of the moon and put it in a trajectory ahead of a splashdown off the coast of California just a few days from now on December 11th.
Canberra is a poop hole. I grew up there. I noticed, Greg, that Australians say that about most cities. Is there something you guys aren't telling us here, or?
During Orion's mission, it broke the record for longest distance traveled away from Earth for a human-rated spacecraft meant to return back to Earth.
Yes, it's blue.
On November 28th, Orion broke that record, having traveled 268,563 miles away from our home planet. During this time period, Orion was in the distant retrograde orbit.
You love it here. All right. Okay, there you go.
Orion remained in this distant retrograde orbit for about 6 days, in which we tested out the systems of the spacecraft in the deep space environment.
Under 1,600 kilometers from the surface.
Last week, the distant retrograde departure burn took place, which brought Orion back towards the moon, which we are now less than 1,000 miles away from. The DRD burn set us up for today's return-powered flyby burn. And this burn, again, sets us up for splashdown just a few days from now.
Image from the recovery practice 3 days ago. Oh, cool. That's a great picture. Sweet. Look at the LPD in the background. That doesn't suck.
Discovery, go at throttle up.
Thanks for the 43 months, Forlorn.
And here is the view of the moon, as mentioned, less than 1,000 miles away. Still a little ways to go to get to our closest approach of the day, at which point Orion will be just 80 miles above the lunar surface. But we are getting closer to today's anticipated burn, now 27 minutes away from that burn, and just 24 minutes away from the anticipated loss of signal.
What ship is picking this up? There's acquisition through DSN right now, RJ. Oh, you're talking about... I'm not sure. The Portland is what's being used. The USS Portland is what's being used for practice. Thanks, Al Hydra. I think that's... What's the hull classification? It's like LPD 46 or something. 26, 27, something in there. I forget. No, 27. There you go. We won't get to see the burn. Yeah, Veganate. It's going to be on the far side of the moon. Have they already passed over the Apollo sites? No. They actually, that's Apollo 18's
Orion continuing to pick up speed as it
but they didn't
closes in on the lunar surface.
But
now traveling at 4,852 miles per hour. And now just 846 miles away from the moon.
Where's the time zoom? A destroyer, frigate? No, it's not a.
We're continuing to get a shot of the Orion spacecraft, namely the European Service Module and the Orbital Maneuvering System, or OMS engine, on the left hand of your screen there, the largest engine shown. That's actually the largest engine on the Orion spacecraft.
It's Dr. J. It's an amphibious assault ship.
The OMS engine is a repurposed Space Shuttle Orbital Maneuvering System engine that has flown on 19 Space Shuttle flights.
Hey, nice guy.
The first flight was STS-41G in October 1984, and the last was STS-112 in October 2002.
I wonder why that OMS engine hasn't flown in 20 years. Amphibious as in is the ship amphibious? No. The ship is not a landing craft. It carries landing craft. LPD-21s are designed, the Marine Corps uses them to move LCACs, landing craft air cushions. Those are landing craft. We still have stuff like Higgins boats, Vega, but they're not. We don't really use those. They use LCACs and AAVs, amphibious assault vehicles, and landing craft air cushions. The LPDs have a well deck, and they're designed to carry a bunch of rotor wing craft and stuff, so they can carry like V-22s or it'd be MV-22s, SH-60s, so helicopters. V-22s, which are tilt rotors, LCACs, AAVs, stuff like that. It's the Marine Corps that uses those things. Also, this picture does not suck. Well, I mean, Vega, I don't know if you've seen the landing craft air cushions. They're really, really big. Those things are like, I don't know, bigger than a tennis court.
And the go, no-go poll for the
Pretty
return-powered flyby is now underway.
Indeed, Vet. Oh, see, this...
And the team here in Mission Control Houston
this
did
is why I started
go
streaming
for
today.
Today's return-powered flyby burn. That burn will take place 23 minutes from now.
Nikes, look at that picture! Oh, it's too good. Oh, that's awesome. Gentlemen, behold! Cheese! They can carry 35 Bs as well. Ooh, that's nice. Look at that shot, man. Oh. There's holes on the moon? Yeah, that's where the graboids live. Oh, shouldn't have said that. Sorry. Why is the go, no go poll private? Because you're on a need-to-know basis, and you don't need to know, apparently. I disagree with that for what it's worth, but... Giant wobbly rock. Indeed. Move your mug to the other side. Don't tell me what to do. It is better framed over here. They thought tremors were from meteors. You're a meteor. You're right.
And with the go from the team here in Mission Control Houston for the return-powered flyby burn, we're now just counting down the minutes until the start of that burn. Again, 22 minutes away from today's burn. This burn will last 3 minutes and 27 seconds. But just prior to the burn, we will lose signal with the Orion spacecraft. That loss of signal is anticipated in 19 minutes from now.
You could see your house from here, Vin?
The reason we do lose communication with the spacecraft is because it will be flying directly behind the moon, and the moon is blocking the signal to the Deep Space Network. However, once the spacecraft travels back to the other side of the moon, we do expect to regain communications with the vehicle at that time.
can't wait till we give astronauts some 4K cameras in this thing. Yeah. This
Orion
is a 4K
is now
camera,
only
dude.
687 miles away from the moon.
1,000 kilometers
At
off the
closest
surface.
approach today, Orion will be just 80 miles above the lunar surface.
Yeah, Dr. J. Yeah, they're enough to move tanks and stuff. The LCACs are really cool, man. Well, we could check them out sometime, dude. I don't know.
Discovery, go at throttle up.
I don't know what could be giving that vibe, Chief. I don't know. You have the sudden urge to visit the moon in Kerbal? I don't know. I mean, that might be the vibe that you have, but the vibe that I'm getting is hunger because cheese. Right click, set as wallpaper. You should see on the other side of signal. On the other side of the signal, guys, of the signal blackout, the view should be insane. Can you turn off your face cam so you can snap the wallpaper? Yeah, sure, man. Is that an Earth I see in the top left? I think
Now
so.
just 20 minutes away from today's return-powered flyby. This burn will commit Orion to a trajectory to head back to planet Earth after its 20-day mission so far. By the time Orion splashes down in the Pacific Ocean, it will have been in space for 25 and a half days.
It looked like it for a second, but it's just a reflection off one of the thrusters. It's not Earth, it's a space station. It's too big to be a space station.
During its journey, Orion has broken the record for longest distance traveled by a human-rated spacecraft meant to return back to Earth. On November 28th, Orion was 268,563 miles away from planet Earth. Right now, Orion is 239,364 miles away from Earth, but only 570 miles away from the moon.
Dude, they're inside of 1,000.
At our closest approach today, Orion will be just 80 miles above the surface.
Sorry, fellas. I thought the reflection up there looked like Earth for a second, but it was just a reflection off the thruster. That's my fault. I'm getting a little hype. These pictures are little bit too much for my monkey brain to be able to handle. Like that one. That one's pretty good. I don't hate this picture. Do we know the total distance traveled by the spacecraft?
Our next set of events will take place in rapid succession. First, we will lose signal with the Orion spacecraft as it travels behind the moon. That loss of signal will be just 15 minutes from now. Then, 3 minutes after we lose signal with Orion, the return-powered flyby burn, or RPF, will take place. This burn will last 3 minutes and 27 seconds and will be completed with the Orbital Maneuvering System, or OMS engine, which you see there on your screen to the left on the European Service Module. It's the largest engine on Orion.
No, we're actually on the close side here, Hibbett.
And today's 3 minute and 27 second burn will be the longest burn that the OMS engine will have completed on the mission so far.
So, the close side's that way, and then the far side is over here. There's the Terminator. We're gonna go around. They're gonna go into the Terminator, and they're gonna go on the far side of the moon, which is dark right now. Don't say dark side of the moon. There's no such thing as dark side of the moon. The moon has day-night cycles. They're just every 2 weeks. It's the other reason why I hate Pink Floyd. That album is good, but that name is wrong. Okay. No, that's not how that works at all. Stupid. Anyway, they're going to go around the far side of the moon, and when we come out on the other side, they'll be flying over most of the Apollo landing sites. You should get a closer view than this. And off we go into the howling dark.
And we're continuing to get some great views of the lunar surface as we fly just 500 miles overhead. This view coming from one of the solar array wings or SAW cameras as it gets into the proper position for today's burn.
The wall is arguably better, Pokemon, but I'm not a big Pink Floyd fan, to be honest with you. You guys can discuss amongst yourselves. What if the burn will fail? Yeah,
coincidentally, 8 years ago to the day was the launch of the Exploration Flight Test 1, or EFT-1. This was the first test flight of the crew module portion of the Orion multipurpose crew vehicle. This was an uncrewed test flight that orbited the Earth 2 times before splashing down. Now, 8 years later, Orion is about to fly behind the moon.
Yeah, she's really going. Yeah, I'll go with T101.
We're 15 minutes away from today's burn.
T800 series, model 101 PBT. If this goes well, what happens next? We'll come out on the other side of the moon, Matt, on a trajectory that's basically optimized for recovery. Have we been near any Apollo sites at all with Orion? We will be in about, 30 minutes. Yeah, look at the metallic coating reflection. Oh, man. Yeah, I should have kept doing that, Joe. You know, you live and learn. Burn fresh, J-Speed. Now, Hypersonic, I wouldn't want to be anywhere near when that happens, but it would be nice. How would this land on the moon? I don't see any space for a LEM type deal. Lunar Starship is going to do it, Arsenal. No, that's bad, EJ. You can't hate Pink Floyd. Dude, there's no dark side of the moon.
Go at throttle up.
Okay? There's no dark side of the moon. Okay? They should stay in their frickin' lane. Okay? Should have stayed in their frickin' lane. Okay? So Artemis won't land on the moon. No. Orion won't land on the moon. SpaceX got hired for the first 2 lunar missions to float a lunar starship out there, Arsenal, and Orion will dock with it and land on the moon with the starship. Artemis is going to the moon. SpaceX just makes the lander. Just like Grumman made the lander during the Apollo missions. But this time around, we're launching the lander separately.
We're now 13 minutes away from today's return-powered flyby burn. Orion is 365 miles above the lunar surface, traveling at a speed of 4,963 miles per hour.
Hat changes are
Just 10 minutes from now, we do anticipate losing signal with Orion as it begins its trip around the backside of the moon.
I was going to say, Arsenal, you confused me for a second. I'm like, wait, I've explained it. You know. All right. I'll just explain it, I guess. Now, don't get me wrong, guys. Believe it or not, in the future...
On the bottom of your screen in the left there, you can see the solar array as it begins to move into place.
In the future, SLS might be able to carry a lander.
You're also looking at the Orion capsule itself there, taking up the majority of your screen. You can see the kind of silver coloring of the capsule. This is the portion that when we have a crew on board as part of Artemis 2 that they will be living and working in during their trip to the moon and beyond.
Dude, working with these pauses makes me want to headbutt a wall. What would you call the side of the moon?
And in the top
Signer?
left of your screen there, you can
We're
see
kidding.
the moon as Orion glides over it, again 335 miles above the surface. But at the closest approach during today's return-powered flyby burn, Orion will be just 80 miles above the lunar surface.
Speaking coherent sentences, Ren, would be a start. No, Sandra's doing a good job. She's doing just fine.
We are hearing that the solar arrays are configured for today's burn.
No, Arsenal, that's what I was trying to tell you. Basically, through Rule 8 stuff, they wanted 2 landers. So in the future, SLS could carry a lander and do landings on the moon Apollo style. The first 2 missions are slated... Oh, you see the RCS is firing in the top left corner. They're reorienting the spacecraft for the return-powered flyby here.
Orion is now moving to the proper burn attitude.
I just said that.
We're now 10 minutes and 30 seconds away from the start of today's 3-minute and 27-second burn. And we expect to lose signal with Orion in 8 minutes.
But yeah, there could be landers that fly on SLS in the future, Arsenal. They certainly have the provisions for it. Bring it around town. Bring it around town. Yeah, you could see in the top left corner, you could see those are the RCS nozzles up there. You could see them firing.
Today's return-powered flyby burn sets us up on a trajectory to splash down off the coast of California just a few days from now on December 11th.
Maybe you could stop ruining my joke, Signer. Jeez. Get out from behind there. You're ruining the paint. You're ruining my joke!
And you were seeing some thruster firings there as Orion maneuvers to the proper attitude for today's burn?
No, hypersonic. I don't think so. It might be derived from Orion, maybe, if that's what you mean. But yeah, dude, oh, look, attitude stabilization. Man, they got to dial those PIDs in. You see that thing's just all over the place. Please take over. No, I'm good. You don't want your boy flying that thing. So, like, it really depends. They haven't awarded the contracts for the second lander, hypersonic, but I do believe that one of the proposals would be taking an Orion pressure vessel and using that as
now less than 6 minutes, 30 seconds until we lose signal with Orion. The burn will start in 8 minutes and 40 seconds. Orion is currently 253 miles above the lunar surface.
Oh, there you go, Jazos. Appendix P. I was going to say option P. No. Artemis is back already? No. Illaris, they're doing a close flyby of the moon here. You'll be able to see it. Give me about 35 minutes, give or take, and you'll be able to see what I'm talking about. The moon is like... they're on the far side, and it is darker on the far side of the moon right now. But Orion is inside of 1,000 kilometers or below 600 miles. It's going to do...
Today's 3-minute and 27-second burn will take place with the Orbital Maneuvering System, or OMS engine. That's the largest engine on the European Service Module. Today's burn will change the velocity of the spacecraft by 960 feet per second during its 3-minute, 27-second burn. Closing in on 5 minutes away from our anticipated loss of signal with Orion. We will not have signal with Orion because the moon will be blocking out the signal to the Deep Space Network. However, when we swing back around on the other side of the moon, we do anticipate to regain those communications.
Signal's getting a little garbled here. I'm not sure, ECMA. Yeah, me too, Novus.
And we are hearing that Orion is in the proper burn attitude. 6 minutes and 40 seconds away from the start of today's 3-minute 27-second burn. Just 4 minutes until today's loss of signal.
Yeah, signal's getting a little warbled. Orion's going to do a close flyby of the moon here, guys. The closest approach will be about 79 miles. That's about 125 kilometers.
As you can see from this telemetry-driven animation, Orion is now 202 miles away from the lunar surface.
320 kilometers. Ladies, no, stop interrupting. No, the lady should stop interrupting me. No. No. 125 kilometers is actually pretty far away, isn't it? What's your reference?
And you're looking at a live view inside the White Flight Control Room here at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. NASA Flight Director Judd Freeling is leading the team on console at this hour.
Judy, I think the astronaut said it's a little bit bigger. There is Baconade, yeah. Cameras are recording in 4K. When burn? Soon.
We were tracking a loss of signal about 2 minutes and 40 seconds from now, but we are hearing that we did get that loss of signal a little earlier than expected, but that is to be anticipated from time to time.
What?
So now the next major milestone that we'll look ahead towards is the return-powered flyby burn less than 5 minutes from now. While we are traveling behind the moon, we do not have signal with the spacecraft because the moon is blocking the connection to the deep space network. We anticipate that loss of signal to last about 30 minutes.
Random question, how did you get into all this stuff? Just a fan, Z-Whip. Yeah, just a fan, dude. Always liked space. Started streaming Kerbal. People liked what I was doing, and stream took off, and I like spacecraft. I like how stuff flies through space. It's really cool, and just kind of took off from there. Never stopped. Never stopped, dude. That was like 10 years ago, man. That's really old in streamer years. Why can't we put a communication satellite behind the moon? There's not really a stable orbit back there, Yudi. Gateway is going to do that. Gateway is about as stable as you're going to get for a lunar relay system.
And our counterparts here in this shot here in the European Space Agency
You're on TV.
Control Center in Noordwijk in the Netherlands. The European Space Agency's contribution to Artemis is, of course, the European Service Module, where the Orbital Maneuvering System, or OMS, engine is located. That's the engine that will be used for today's 3-minute and 27-second burn to propel us around the backside of the moon and commit us to a trajectory back to Earth ahead of a splashdown on December 11th. We're now less than 3 minutes away from the start of that 3-minute, 27-second burn.
It's in Orange Country.
Right now, we do not have signal with the Orion spacecraft. That is expected as the vehicle is traveling behind the moon.
Orange football team bad. Orange Country bad. No.
This loss of signal will last about 30 minutes.
Sack them.
And as Orion comes back around the other side of the moon, we will be able to regain communications with the vehicle.
No, orange race car driver bad, Pegster. No. Tell us where orange team touched your team. In Qatar. No. They did, Dr. J, yeah. They had their way with the U.S. national team. Yeah, that's the right way to put that. That's the right way to put that.
Now less than 2 minutes from today's return powered flyby burn.
It was not pretty at all. Don't we have sats further than the orbit of the moon to relay?
And you do see the team here in Mission Control stand up and stretch their legs right now. Oftentimes they'll use this time to catch a quick break while the vehicle is in the loss of signal period.
It was a pretty thorough butt kicking.
Again, today's loss of signal is expected to be about 30 minutes in length.
It was pretty thorough. It's like we thoroughly got our rear end handed to us, man. It was bad. But also, Orange Country, bad. No. Orange Team, bad. Orange Race Car Driver, bad. Bad. Bad.
One minute until the start of today's return-powered flyby burn.
Hey, that guy over there with the yellow has the same container as me. Nice. Hello from Orange Country. No, minimum. No. 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 Was Jones bad again? No. European football, Zizep, not our football. Not American football. That's different. The Patriots do need to fix
30 seconds until the start of today's 3-minute, 27-second long burn, committing Orion to a return home.
I do like stroopwafel, Jonas. Yeah. Stroop is very good.
15 seconds until burn start.
Where are the gimbal and the Starship video feeds? Oh, here, let me change the camera angle. There you go. See? There you go. Here, we'll switch to the 3/4 view.
And we do expect the burn to be underway. Again, this is a 3-minute, 27-second long burn. Because Orion is behind the moon and we do not have signal with the vehicle, we will not be able to confirm that the burn has began or the results of that burn until we come back around to the other side and regain communications on the Deep Space Network.
Yeah, failure's messy. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? All right, so Orion's on the far side here. Should be doing its burn here real quick.
Today's burn is being completed with the Orbital Maneuvering System, or OMS engine. That's the largest engine on the bottom of the European Service Module.
I don't know, grab sharp. That was my knee. I just need the bottom of my desk.
Today's 3-minute and 27-second long burn will be the longest during the Artemis 1 mission used by the OMS engine. But the OMS engine can fire for up to 16 minutes in length.
Go and throttle up.
Oh, a sub. Hi, Doc. 58 months. If the burn fails, what would happen? Orion would probably use its other thrusters. They have different sets of thrusters just in case. Have you tried maybe not doing that? Yeah, that's probably a good idea. What do you think of this idea? Modify a few Starlinks with different radios and antennas to work with NASA's networks. Yeah, just change the antenna. Put like 10 of those on a Falcon Heavy and send it to the moon. Hey, presto, dark side communications coverage. Sounds good? No, it doesn't sound good.
Now approaching the 2-minute mark into today's return-powered flyby burn. 1 minute and 27 seconds remaining.
Yeah, the guys, it's not like Kerbal. I'll just put a relay network around the moon. The moon is notoriously unstable for orbits. Like, really, it's really bad. Really bad. Yeah. I mean, Synard, that's a horrible idea. Gateway is a really good way to do it because Gateway is in a resonant orbit. Lunar precession basically pulls stuff in. The moon, so like if you like looked at the moon and you looked at the moon's relative center of mass, it's not directly in the relative like volumetric center of the planet.
3-minute mark into today's burn.
Hello. What's up, man?
Again, this burn is critical as it will slingshot us around the backside of the moon and place us on a trajectory ahead of a splashdown off the coast of California.
If they did do that, failures, yeah.
3 minutes into the burn, 27 seconds remaining.
so the moon has precession, so it's basically kind of weeble wobbling around, and that really makes putting stuff in a stable orbit around there, it really limits your options for what's like a stable orbit.
Discovery,
a network out there like a Starlink network would require constant thrust, and even then.
And we do expect the burn to be complete at this time. Again, because we are behind the moon and do not have signal with the spacecraft, we will not be able to confirm until Orion comes back around the other side of the moon. We are anticipating that acquisition of signal about 24 minutes and 45 seconds from now.
I'm not sure what all the acronyms are, Jack. I'm sure we could find it, though. What about relay sats at Earth, Moon, L4, and L5? Once again, extraordinarily unstable. Hunster. L4 and L5 are super unstable between the Earth and the Moon. You like, think about it like if you're rotating around and the sun gets near you, it'll pull you right out of L5. And that's what I mean about like.
Discovery, go at throttle up.
You're gonna need a lot of like. There's a lot of things that'll pull you away from the Moon. It's not like Earth with a much stronger gravitational pull. Heck, Earth could pull satellites out of lunar orbit if it's in the right orbit. You know what I mean? What if we achieve a geostationary orbit with Earth with a distance that lies behind the Moon?
And if you're just joining us, the return-powered flyby burn, the burn that is going to send Orion back around the other side of the moon in anticipation of a splashdown next week off the coast of California, has completed. Orion is still behind the moon at this hour, and we are in a period of a loss of signal. With the vehicle, we're anticipating to get that acquisition of signal back less than 24 minutes from now. But while Orion continues its journey around the moon...
Yeah, all right. Drummer, check this out. What have you missed? Here, we got more NASA scientists here. How's that for a shot? So Yudi, you can't do geostationary around a tidally locked planet like the moon. Basically, when it swung around near Earth, when the satellite swung around near Earth, Earth would just pull it away. Guys, it's not lunar orbits are not nearly as stable as Earth orbits. Not even close. Yeah, the precession and orbital perturbing forces are way stronger out there than they are on Earth. On Earth, it's much easier to get a nice stable orbit because Earth has a lot of gravitational pull. The moon's grav well is not nearly as much as Earth's. It's 1/6. So even Earth will pull satellites away from the moon. Heck, when Mars gets close, it'll pull it away. When the moon is closer to the sun than Earth is, it'll pull stuff away. It's not as easy as you think. There's a reason why we don't go out there. We haven't gone out there for a little while. You know? Do you mean L1, L2 points are stable? L4, L5 is the front and back of moon orbits. Yep. Are you guessing or are you just saying things because reasons? No. L1 and L2 are more stable. L4 and L5 are very unstable, but even L1 and L2 are unstable as well. You're going to need constant thrust to get something to stay there.
Looking for this time around.
Yeah, part of our directorate includes the astromaterials and the curation of those materials. So all of the Apollo samples that came home came here to Johnson Space Center, and we have a dedicated facility that maintains them, manages the samples to send out to the science community for investigations. And that will also happen, they already do that for other samples, like the comet samples that come back from Hayabusa and Genesis. And as we bring Artemis samples home, they'll also be managing those and curating them. And really some of the advances in the science and measurements that we can make today that we did not have in Apollo are already getting prepared.
Great. And the very last thing I wanted to chat with you about today was the moment we've all been waiting for today, the return-powered flyby burn that occurred just 7 minutes and 9 seconds ago. So you had talked a little bit about this burn and why the timing of it was important on a Twitter post that you had shared. So can you talk a little bit more about that for the folks who maybe didn't see that?
Yeah, so all of the burns are very well calculated for specific reasons. So these burns have to be executed within moments of the timing. But really what it's doing is it's timing the return trip to Earth and then targeting so that when Orion travels behind the Earth, that's when the Pacific Ocean will be underneath the entry corridor. So we're targeting for a very thin slice of atmosphere, and that's where we do our aero capture. So the atmosphere actually slows Orion down, and we need to make sure all of that is set up precisely so that we can enter the atmosphere while the Pacific is where the entry targeting is, so that we can be landing right where the recovery forces are. So there's a lot of calculations that go into it by the wider trajectory team, but this is truly our deorbit burn. So we are doing a major maneuver right now which targets our entry in 6 days.
Great. Thank you for talking through that a little bit more. Again, that burn occurred 8 minutes ago, and once we acquire signal and we come back around on the other side, we'll be able to know if that burn was successful. We're looking ahead of that acquisition of signal now 20 minutes from now. But thank you so much, Najud, for taking some time. I know you're very busy, so I really appreciate you taking a few minutes to chat with us.
Thank you for having me. Like I said, it's really important what is going on, and I'm really excited to see this burn be successful for the conclusion of the mission.
Absolutely.
I guess, I mean, within reason, where small adjustments can be made now and then. I mean, the moon really isn't going to start messing with stuff like really bad, Charlie, until you get kind of closer to it. But yeah, it's important to understand that everything is affecting everything up there. Mars affects a satellite in Earth orbit. It'll pull it in that direction in some way, shape, or form. Like Mars is in a slightly higher orbit around the sun than Earth is. When Mars and Earth get close to each other, yeah, it'll start pulling satellites in that direction. It's a pain in the butt, guys. Like, think about it if you had like a buoy in the middle of the ocean, like a deep water buoy, and you want it to stay there. You want it to stay in a certain spot. You're going to need thrusters constantly to move that thing around because, ocean currents are moving it around. Now, don't get me wrong. There's no like gravitational currents in space. We don't, at least we don't think. There might be. I don't know. But when a planet does get near, its grav well will pull you in that direction. That's why it's hard. That's part of the reason why it's hard to get stuff out to the moon. It is really, really difficult. The Apollo missions made it look really easy, but they made it look really easy by kind of brute forcing their way to the surface, so to speak. The guys will start coming back, Mock. Give it a second. They're in communications blackout. There's not much to do. A buoy, or a landing pad for an orbital class rocket booster. Yeah, now you're speaking my language.
We're now 17 minutes and 45 seconds away from the anticipated acquisition of signal following today's return-powered flyby burn, which took place about 11 minutes ago. That burn was 3 minutes and 27 seconds and committed us back to a return trajectory, headed back to planet Earth, where Orion will complete its 25-and-a-half-day test flight mission around the moon and beyond.
Hey, Drunken Gamer. 64 months. Thanks, buddy. Oh, he's got a burrito. Homeboy's got a burrito. He's eating a burrito. I wonder what kind. And solar power wouldn't be able to help with these maneuvers? I mean, you can. What I'm trying to tell you is that you wouldn't be able to keep the satellite there very long. It would need to do a constant burn to be able to keep going. And, I mean, you could keep it there for a little bit of time, but it would eventually fall out of orbit.
Now, the last time NASA made a journey around the moon...
What I'm trying to tell you is that Gateway... Now, don't get me wrong. You can use these orbital perturbations to hold things in place. The Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter is a good example of that. It is in a resonant orbit. It actually uses those natural pulling forces to stay on orbit. Those resonant orbits around the moon are where you want your communications satellites to be. Now, there is a certain type of lunar orbit called a rectilinear halo orbit, which is where Gateway is going. That is a resonant orbit. It'll stay there. It'll use the moon's precession to basically stay nice and stable. Now, don't get me wrong. Even a nice and stable orbit is still going to get pulled in different directions. You're still going to need thrusters. But for certain orbits, you're going to need way more thrusters than others. It's not that NASA's not going to put a communications relay out there, guys. Gateway is the communications relay. It is in a little bit of a funky orbit, not a geostationary orbit, not anything like that. It's a eccentric polar orbit, but it uses those same orbital perturbing forces to actually stay in orbit for long periods of time. There is a satellite in Gateway's orbit right now called Capstone. Capstone was launched by a company called Rocket Lab with their Electron rocket. It's a little shoebox-sized satellite that's testing the waters, so to speak, of that type of rectilinear halo orbit to make sure that it's stable. So when they go to put Gateway out there, it'll stay there. So, I mean, guys, the quick answer is, because this is the question I've literally been getting asked the most. You know, well, why don't we just put Starlinks out there? Okay, it's not that simple, but NASA does have plans for that. That's what Gateway is. Gateway is a relay, and Gateway will be able to relay communication from anywhere, basically. Does that make sense, Judy? Long story short, it's not NASA basically doesn't want to get stuck footing the bill to maintain a crazy network out there. So they found an orbit that gives you like coverage 90% of the time. And they're just going to kind of roll with it. With Gateway, you'll never have a blackout on the far side of the moon because of how Gateway's orbit is inherently resonant. Yeah, man. Gateway is going to be the relay. And it will be powerful enough to do it.
68,563 miles from our home planet.
You think spin launch makes more sense from a lunar base than Earth? Not really, Ren, because honestly on the moon, all you need is basically just an upper stage. Spin launch on the moon, you could just take the spin launch second stage and just launch it and it'll get into space. The moon rotates around its axis at the same speed it revolves around Earth. Do moons of other planets rotate in the same way?
We're about 13
Sometimes.
minutes away from our
Our moon is
anticipated
weird,
acquisition
though,
of signal. As Orion flies around the backside of the moon, let's take a look back at what has gotten us to this point so far. First up, we start with the Space Launch System launching from Pad 39B at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida with its sights set on the moon. SLS blasted off at 12:47 a.m. Central on November 16th. You see those 4 RS-25 engines lighting up the Space Coast. You can also see the core stage climb up, as well as one of the 2 solid rocket boosters in this view. And on top of the vehicle is the launch abort system, and of course the Orion spacecraft now behind the moon. This video shows SLS and Orion's climb to orbit from the perspective of a camera on the rocket. It was about an 8.5-minute climb into orbit. You can see the launch pad grow smaller and smaller as the Space Launch System propels Orion into orbit.
What, Duck? I don't know what that means.
Following liftoff and the climb to orbit, the translunar injection burn took place. The translunar injection maneuver took place as the upper part of the rocket.
Mob Crusher, our moon's technical name is Luna. That's the name of our moon. We just call it the moon because it's the moon that we have. But yeah, our moon's a very weird anomaly. We have a gigantic freaking moon comparatively to some of these other planets around the solar system. Earth's moon is huge compared to other moons.
Targeted a point on the moon that guided Orion close enough to be captured by the moon's gravity. Now, right after that TLI burn, the interim cryogenic propulsion stage separated from Orion, and you do see that here in the video as it drifts further away from the spacecraft.
Oh, yeah, Doug, yeah, that makes
Later
more
that
sense.
day, we received our first imagery of Earth, as well as completed the first checkout of the Orbital Maneuvering System, or OMS engine. All went smoothly, and that Orbital Maneuvering System engine was used.
It's not about the size, Dodo. You know the only people that say stuff like that are people with small moons. Just saying.
Days later, on November 21st, Orion performed the outbound powered flyby burn, also with that
You don't have small moons, do you?
orbital maneuvering engine. This is the sister to the return powered flyby burn. The orbital maneuvering burn sets us up in a trajectory to head out to deep space. The return powered flyby burn sets us up on a trajectory to return back home.
Earth's
This
moon
video
is
shows
huge, dude.
Orion as it
See?
approached
Look.
the moon for this
Look how
burn.
big it is. It's pretty good size. I like
And
big
as
moons,
we
and I
mentioned
cannot lie.
in this broadcast several times, Orion has traveled further than any human-rated spacecraft.
I won't
but
do that
in
again.
this view here, that was taken just shortly before that, you can see an eclipse, the moon traveling in front of the Earth, a view we don't often see here on Earth. And this photo was taken on flight day 13, November 28th, when Orion reached its maximum distance from Earth, when it was 268,563 miles away from our home planet. Orion has traveled further than any spacecraft built for humans meant to return back home. And in this video here, you see Orion's solar rays split the difference between Earth and the moon on flight day 14. This image is captured by a camera on the tip of one of the spacecraft's 4 solar arrays.
Man.
And just last week, on December 1st, the distant retrograde departure burn occurred, which placed Orion in a trajectory to exit the distant retrograde orbit and head back toward the moon ahead of today's return-powered flyby, which occurred just 19 minutes 15 seconds ago. In this view here, you can see the solar arrays, gimbal, as well as a Earth in the almost center of your screen there. So as you can see, Orion has had a busy journey in its 20 days of the mission so far, but it's not finished yet. We have about 5.5 days to go until splashdown.
It is set to one bow indeed.
But today's return-powered flyby burn was the first step in getting us to the splashdown point. That burn commits us to returning home.
Discovery, go at throttle up.
Shep. All right, controllers looks like the flight controllers went on a lunch break. Should be coming back here in a second.
We anticipate regaining communications with the Orion spacecraft about 8 minutes and 15 seconds from now.
Discovery, go at throttle up.
Hey, Nico, 46 months. Canamore, Orion is on the far side of the moon. It should be coming up here in about 7 minutes. And it should, if my math is serving me left, it should give us some really, really beautiful shots of the moon.
You're looking at a view inside Mission Control Houston. This is the white flight control room.
What is that, S?
The flight director during today's shift and return-powered flyby burn is
The
NASA
Lortnock
Flight Director
Station?
Judd Freeling.
Hip, I don't know.
You do see a few of the console positions looking a little empty. That is because we are in that loss of signal period. This is a great time for the flight controllers here in Houston to grab a quick break.
That's cool. That's cool. Lols, very neat. Very neat. Is it possible to make the moon start rotating on its axis theoretically? Yeah. I mean, if something hit it hard enough, sure. But I don't think we could do it with like a rocket engine. Not even a nuke would do it. I mean, the scale that we're talking about here with planets, UD, is just a scale we don't understand. We understand it, but we're not Forerunner. You know what I'm saying? It's not Halo. I honestly would not want to make the moon start to spin, because if the moon starts spinning, that means Earth would slow down. Earth's spin would slow down a little bit. You don't want to do that. Man, I don't need to get less sleep. I already don't get enough sleep. Like I said, you got to remember, in space, everything affects everything, even the spinning force. The fact that Earth is spinning so ridiculously fast and the moon is not really spinning at all, because it's tidally
Today's
locked,
return-powered flyby burn
is actually pushing the moon further away. Now, you want to do something ridiculous. If you think of Mars, Mars is not spinning very fast. It's not spinning very fast. And Phobos, one of Mars's moons, is actually getting pulled in due to the low RPMs. I say low RPMs. It's not an engine. It's a planet. The low revolution, it's not spinning as much. It's actually pulling Phobos in because Earth is spinning faster, and Earth is not a uniform gravitational. Doesn't have uniform gravitational pull. It actually gives the moon a little bit of a boost, and it's pushing the moon's orbit further away. Very slowly. Don't get me wrong. The moon ain't going anywhere. Not in our lifetime. That's for sure. Thanks, S. Can't you just say stuff in chat and not have it be like, oh, did you see this AI bot that I'm using? Like, yeah, Yudi, it's getting further away. But the sun will probably eat Earth and the moon before it leaves our orbit. You know what I'm saying? Earth's got a pretty strong gravitational pull for what it is. Yeah, Shipman. So, Yudi, what happens that now we're talking like stars now. What happens is that the sun is eventually going to run out of fuel. Don't get me wrong. It's not happening for billions of years. It's not going to happen for billions of years. So what happens when the sun runs out of fuel? As the sun starts running out of fuel, it'll basically lean out and get really, really freaking hot. And I say lean out, that's not really how that works, but it'll actually start to get small for a second, and then it'll start expanding really, really fast. And when it starts expanding, yeah, be somewhere else. Hopefully humanity is somewhere else by then. Yeah, it'll basically get really, 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 really freaking hot because it's running out of fuel, and it'll start to actually under the heat. With the heat, it'll actually start to compress, and then it'll blow up. It'll go right to your thighs, and then you'll blow up. I don't think it'll red giant white dwarf or something. No, that doesn't sound right. Heliophysics is not my forte, man. That's not. Yeah. Not my area of expertise. That's not my department. All right, we should be coming out of communications blackout here.
Away from the lunar surface.
I don't think it'll go red giant. Yeah, Cludies, I don't think it's big enough.
Beginning to see more folks trickle back into the white flight control room as we narrow in on our anticipated acquisition of signal with the Orion spacecraft, which is currently traveling behind the moon.
Yeah, there you go, Dr. J. Yeah, it'll actually get small and then it'll pop. Yep. But anyway, yeah, that will happen before the moon leaves our orbit. But yeah, and Phobos eventually is going to crash into Mars eventually. It's like watching a car accident in slow motion, or like a crash test in slow motion. It'll eventually happen. Yeah. You know, I actually usually give you guys crap for, for a lot of people knowing about a subject, but
now,
there actually is a lot of people that know
seconds away from our anticipated
well in there,
acquisition of signal with the Orion spacecraft.
Not bad. Okay, 1 minute 25.
Once we acquire signal with the spacecraft, the team here in Mission Control Houston, namely the flight controllers, will be able to analyze the data that the vehicle is sending back to us in mission control. With that data, they'll be able to analyze if the burn was successful. Less than 1 minute away from our anticipated acquisition of signal with the Orion spacecraft.
Boo! What? Sorry. Man, that guy's really into those Funyuns. I mean, they are Funyuns, to be sure. At least I think that's Funyuns. That's a Funyuns bag, isn't it?
30 seconds away from anticipated acquisition of signal.
It is. It's Funyuns. Nice. Funyuns are onion ring potato chips. He's eating chips. It could be Funyuns, man. Flamin' Hot Cheetos? Oh, dude. No, don't eat Cheetos when you're near your keyboard. No. Oh. Oh, bro, what kind of savages is in here?
And we are standing by for acquisition of signal with the Orion spacecraft.
Okay, here we go. Yudi, that's still a good ways out from what I understand. If you're going fast enough, dude, you don't need to do cryosleep, to be honest with you. If we can get going fast, you won't age as fast because relativity do be like that. Oh, here we go. Oh, no, come back.
And we do have confirmation of an acquisition of signal on the Deep Space Network.
Oh, yeah, baby. That's what I've been waiting for. Oh, oh, yeah.
You're getting a view of the lunar surface from Orion's perspective.
No, please come back. Do you see this? Dude, an Earth eclipse. Oh, that's so cool. Please come back. I showed you my Earthrise. Please respond. Oh, come on. We need that back. Gives it back. Come on, do something. Telemetry-driven animation. Dude, did you see that?
And we are hearing good confirmation that the burn was as expected.
Good. Please. Oh, they got it. They got the live view. Look at the monitor. Come on. Hey.
If you're
Hello?
just joining us, Orion
The guy's
completed
taking a
its
picture of it.
return-powered flyby
Oh,
burn,
hey!
which
What the
slingshot it
frick?
around the moon and
Show us!
committed Orion to a return trajectory back to planet Earth, hearing that burn went smoothly and as expected. You are seeing a view on your screen of the lunar surface as well as Earth. For Orion, this is not a goodbye, but a see you later to the moon, our nearest celestial neighbor, as we begin to get our first glimpse of an Earthrise coming into frame. In this view, we see 8 billion human lives all existing upon our pale blue dot, our
God,
blue
she's
marble,
talking about me.
our very own spaceship Earth. And after a long journey, Orion is now coming home.
Don't need him, visceral. Oh, I'm just sitting here enjoying the view. That is freaking sweet. I'm not saying nothing. I don't need to say nothing. Look at that. I know, Squish. The nerve on that guy. The nerve on that lady. Talk us through what's on the screen. So,
from this view, Orion is
Sandra's
1,277 miles above the lunar surface following its return-powered flyby burn, which sent it around the backside of the moon.
So, that's Earth over there.
Orion now has its sights set
flare.
on home.
So this is Earth right here.
Orion will splash down off the coast of California on December 11th, wrapping up a 25-and-a-half-day mission.
Cause Mama, I'm coming home. Oh, signal handover. Yeah, the thing that was like down here at the bottom, that was a lens flare, but the sea is Earth. That's Earth right there, and then the moon's obviously close, and then that's Orion.
This is a view from inside the White Flight Control Room here in Mission Control Houston.
Why is everything so dark?
The team
Where's
is being
the
led
stars?
by NASA Flight.
Where's the stars? Well, there's this thing. You're getting a lot of light from one star. The thing is that one star is a lot closer than all the other stars in the background. And yeah, it tends to drown them out on a camera lens. Yeah, the sun is a lot closer. You could see light from one of the stars. I wouldn't stare into it for too long though, it'll hurt your eyes. Will the Navy assist in the recovery of Orion? Yes. I mean, it's the same reason why you don't go stargazing in the middle of the day. The sun gets in the way, and it's pretty bright, and it usually drowns out what you can see.
Discovery, go at throttle up.
Is that sunrise or sunsetting on the transitional strip? I want to know if I'm in that picture or not. Tio, you could... I know this might seem dumb, but you can look at a clock and find that out. The sun is rising right now, basically out over the Pacific Ocean. So Hawaii, it's 6 hours behind. So it's 6 a.m. in Hawaii right now. When do we find the monolith? Well, we gotta land first. Bye. Wait, what? I'm just moon. So, stupid question. Would you be able to see the stars if Earth was blocking the sun while in space? Oh, absolutely, Dragon. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Dude, okay, so, think about the ISS. The ISS is orbiting around it's in low Earth orbit, right? Dude, it's only 400 kilometers that way. It's 270 miles. That's not going to make a difference on a cosmic scale of being able to not see the stars. There's plenty of shots of the ISS when they take pictures of the sky in the nighttime. They're all over the place. They're freaking everywhere. You could see the stars just like you could see the stars down on the surface. You're not that much further away.
We will be hearing about it from a cruise perspective during Artemis 2.
But good questions, dude. I mean, these are questions that should be said, you can't see any of the other stars. It's the same reason why you can't see stars during the day. I mean, there's that freaking big pulsating ball of fusion thing that comes up in the morning and don't stare at it for too long. Yeah, it's pretty bright. That's drowning out the light from all the other stars. Oh yeah, but dude, people have talked about putting telescopes on the far side of the moon. I mean, even James Webb. So the James Webb telescope is in a it's in a point where Earth and the sun's gravity kind of cancel each other out, and it's floating there. And so if you have the sun here and the Earth here, as it rotates, James Webb, Earth and the sun always form a straight line. And what it's basically doing is it's using, I'm not going to say Earth's shadow, but that's kind of the idea. It's basically using Earth's shadow to go and look at stuff in the dark. You know what I mean? Because the sun freaking... When the sun heats up stuff, it's harder. It bends light. It diffuses through light. Gas diffuses through light. So you actually want it. You get a clearer view of the sky at night on top of the sun not being in the way. How long into the moon has a big honking telescope? And when we get there, I don't know, soon. It's pretty shady. Yeah, I know.
Continuing to hear good performance following today's return-powered flyby burn.
That's correct, silly. Yep. Mm-hmm. That shot is amazing. First, we got to build the moon amusement park. Well, we have to build the whalers on the moon exhibit, too, man. Yeah, exactly, K-Mac. Yeah, exposure do be like that. I wonder what Carl Sagan would say. Carl Sagan would probably say, yes, this is a really nice
The Orion
shot.
spacecraft is continuing
really
to distance
happy that
itself
we're looking
from
at
the
it.
moon, now over
Or Kermit the Frog would say
1,500
that.
miles away from the lunar surface. Throughout the course of the next few days, we will see the distance from Earth continue to grow smaller and smaller. Orion is now 242,000 miles away from planet Earth. The spacecraft is moving at a velocity of 2,150 miles per hour.
What would Stephen Hawking say? Push me, and then just touch me. No, wait, no, maybe he wouldn't say that. Will there be any video views from the solar panels looking back at the service module during engine firings? There already has been, Squishin, but yeah, maybe. Well, it's on the moon. We carry a harpoon. Seeing our whaling too. It's a great episode, Pi. Why is it still wobbling? The solar panels are just wobbling around. That shot's pretty dope. Yeah. It doesn't look like Mun. Well, Mun's a different planet
We're continuing
than Moon.
to get some spectacular views from the Orion spacecraft.
Yeah, that'd
This
be
view
cool.
is from
See
one
it
of the
soon.
solar array wing or SAW cameras on board the vehicle. The vehicle now over 1,680 miles away from the moon,
So that sea over there,
and that small
crescent
sliver
over there, that looks like a
towards the
crescent
bottom
moon.
of
That's
your
crescent
screen,
Earth.
that's here, that's home,
Yeah.
that's us,
Hey, Sandra, stop copying me.
and that is where Orion is headed next.
Stop copying us. Are the solar panels enough to catch solar wind? Yeah, yeah, of course, Harmon. Sure. Correct me if I'm wrong, EJ, but if you put a telescope on the moon, you will not have the same problem with atmospheric distortion like here on Earth. Precisely. That's right. That's me. That's us. It's me, your friend, Gabe Newell. I'd like to break wind over the moon. Yeah, but there's no wind on the moon, Ben. Can't do that. I don't remember off the top of my head, Jazzos. Squishton, what I'm trying to tell you is that Half-Life 3 takes place on the moon. Portal 2 kind of foresaw that. Isn't that why they want to put an IR radio telescope on the far side? Correct. You are right. Now try echo. Wait, what? Right. Their solar wind on the moon? Whose solar wind on the moon, TJ? Yes, Novus, precisely. Yeah, exactly, Jonas. That's where it is. It got sucked through the portal at the end of Portal 2. That's what I'm trying to tell you. This Terminator's way better than the one in the box office. Hey, that was a good movie, okay? Dude, spoiler. I can't... Dude, but Pogo, I know it seems like Portal 2 came out like a week ago. I have some news for you. That was 14 years ago.
And with today's return-powered fly-by-burn now complete, and Orion having completed its closest approach to the moon at a distance of 80 miles above the surface, that will wrap up our coverage for today, but we'll continue to post daily updates about the mission on the Artemis blog at blogs.nasa.gov/Artemis, and we'll also be posting updates on our social media accounts. Later today, we'll have a briefing at 4 p.m. Central where representatives from NASA will discuss today's return-powered flyby, which we hope you'll tune in for. And we'll also be covering Orion's re-entry into Earth's atmosphere and its splashdown live on air next week. But until then, this is Mission Control Houston.
I'm a little annoyed that they're cutting the camera now because in about 10-15 minutes, they'll be over the Apollo landing sites. It's not like that's a big deal or anything, right? Just here for a couple hours, and then we'll go home. Let's see. How big of a helium balloon would be needed to pass the Kármán line? Dude, you don't need a helium balloon. Just heat up gas inside of the balloon; it'll expand. That works. Not as big as you might think. Look up the freaking. I was going to say look up Felix Baumgartner's balloon, but that was not near the Kármán line. You'd need a pretty big balloon. I don't think, now that I'm thinking about it, I don't think we could get a balloon that high. There's an official YouTube one that's uninterrupted. Oh, boy. Yes. Yeah, but who knows if they're going to turn the damn camera for it, but that's okay. The best shot that we've seen thus far is
Discovery, go at throttle up.
These shots right here. Oh man. Hey DIA 58-month resub. Oh, that's pretty good. That shot's pretty good too. I'm just gonna sit here and watch this for a little bit. Yeah, I don't want to be here when that happens, Chief. How fast is it going now after trans-earth injection? It's like 4,000 or 5,000 miles an hour. Show your hands. It's 1900 right now, Jazzos? Yeah. It's going to start slowing down until it leaves lunar SOI, and then it'll start speeding up again. 1924. Very nice. 1924.
Listen, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
Roger, Tranquility. We copy on the ground. Hey guys, I'm not gonna say that S Master just figured out how to use the new AI chatbot, but yeah, he figured out how to use the new AI chatbot. You know how I know? He's done 3 crap posts in chat using the AI chatbot. 2 about me, 1 about supersonic retropropulsion, and then guess what that tip message was? Guess what that tip message was? Oh, it's more chatbot. It's more chatbot. Whoa, bro. It's just like you guys remember when you figured out how to use Microsoft Sam text to speech in like the Windows control panel back in the day, and everybody would just get Microsoft Sam to say like the most dirty, illicit stuff. And then if you already had discovered that and somebody else discovered it for the first time, like yep, it's Microsoft Sam. The AI chatbot is very much like this. I would never. People did that? No, EJ, we don't. Tell us all about it. All right, S. Here's your poem. A rocket roars through the sky with supersonic retropropulsion on its side. It blasts through the atmosphere with a mighty blaze, protected from the heat and all the more ablaze. Beautiful display of science and might, guiding the rocket to a safe landing site. Now add music to it. No. There's plenty more where that came from. I'll bring the beers. I'll bring the beers. Nice rhyme, Triceratops. You're good. Even when your solar panels sag down to the floor. Sag down to the floor. It's a good movie. Here, I got one for you, S. If you try to knock me, you'll get popped. I'll stir fry you in my wok. Your knees will start shaking and your fingers will pop like a pinch on the neck from Mr. Spock. Intergalactic. Planetary. Planetary intergalactic. You're welcome. That sounded familiar. No, I wrote that. Yeah, me. Cast you off into exile. Intergalactic, planetary, intergalactic. Another dimension, 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 another dimension. Is this the new single from Supersonic Retropropulsion? Yeah, sure. No, it's totally not intergalactic. Star Trek Beyond established the Beastie Boys as canon in the Star Trek universe. How could they write a lyric about Mr. Spock, who's a real person? Yours is more appropriate? No, it's not. Oh. Would you either have Flow, Constellation, Artemis, or Mars Direct, and why? Constellation, because it's the best. Use the Force, Harry. Gandalf. Psych! It's the wrong orbital period! Oh! Did we get good trajectory confirmed? Yes, we did. We also got this shot, which is pretty good. Frick. That's why I covered this today. I wanted that shot. Why did the craft not exit from the left? That was the DRO deorbit burn that they did, Sun Temple. The burn that they did a couple of days ago made them go around the made them go around prograde around the moon for return. They left retrograde orbit. I really wish they would do exactly what they're doing right now. They're reorienting the capsule. Hold on. Get a picture of the moon, please. The Apollo sites are illuminated right now. We should probably like go look at that. That would be cool. That would be pretty cash money. Oh. They fired the RCS. No. Just check out the blog. Yeah. Did you see that the Texas Rangers signed DeGrom? Why would he go there anyway? Hip, I'll kick you right in the junk if you say that again. Yes. Yes, turn the solar panels. Oh, yes, it will please me. Yes, very nice. It's getting kind of bright. Because they offered him the most money. Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. Where did that money come from, Hillness?
Discovery, go at throttle up.
Short. 613 sub. Thanks, man. You getting sick yet? Whoa, this is crazy. Yeah, like I said, there's one star that's a lot closer than everything else, and yeah, it gets a little bright.
Discovery, go at throttle up.
Hey, Flash, 4613 sub. Morning. Oh, they fired the RCS again. They're doing some kind of craft reorientation. They're probably taking the Orion out of the orientation that it needed to do the return powered flyby and putting it back into the thermal control orientation, basically pointing the butt of the spacecraft at the sun. How come that camera's not rotating together with the craft? Because the solar panels can rotate, Chief. The solar panels can do this, and they can go forward and back. I want a spacecraft with solar panels like this! And like this! Not like this. Yes, those are solar panels. Yes, this is dog. Convoy, serious question. How many unmanned launches before they shoehorn people into that? The next flight is going to have people on it, and it's about 18 months away. 16 to 18 months. Coffee time break when? No, this is Patrick. Oh, thank you, NASA. Oh, Saint Anky. Please adjust exposure. You ever stared at it? Marveled at its beauty? Its genius? Alright, just dial in the exposure for me. Just dial in the exposure. Yes. Aziz, too much. Whoa! Did you see the engine? It moved. Corbin, it moved. Corbin, I got no fire. I got no matches. You got no matches. I got no matches. I mean, Father, you smoke? You all gonna die. It's wiggly. It's doing the piggly wiggly. No, you know what it is? You know what it is, guys? Orion just gave you the stank leg. That's what just happened. Just gave you the stanky leg. Hands. No, I'm good. That's cool. We saw them do a thrust vector controller check out there. Yeah, Squish. That actually should be about the right timeline. Yep. Zeros, you gotta see this a little bit earlier. Check this out. And the moon is getting larger. Oh man, that's cool. Here, we gotta go back a little ways. This one is the oh, that's dope. Come back now. Yeah, animal, isn't that crazy? Oh, more TVC checkouts. Look, the AJ-10, left side of the screen. See, they're wiggling it back and forth. That's no moon. Well, then what is it? NASA needs to work on their space GoPro lens flare, Kappa. The AI write that to us? It's a little bright. My eyes! Chocolate! Oh, okay, we're good. Yes, and so is this. I told it to imitate my world-renowned chat style. Why would you take something so advanced like an AI and make it say stupid things? SMH my head. I know what you said, Gore. Contaminating the moon with man-made nuclear junk will ruin your chances of going back. Oh yeah? Should we tell him? Should we tell him? Oops. I can think of no higher purpose for such technology. So Ox, I got some bad news, buddy. There's already nuclear material on the moon. The Snap 27, it's a little nuclear power generator. Telling me the sucker's nuclear? No. This sucker's electrical. But I need a nuclear reaction to generate the 1.21 gigawatts of electricity that I need. It's a little RTG. Yep, Snap 27. Look it up. They were supposed to bury it in the ground with the little flag way over there, Mark. I think that was a different mission. Oh. The hell's a gigawatt? Yeah, I think so, Red. That makes sense. See over there? Those are the Apollo landing sites. They're over there in the dark gray regions of the moon. The lunar lowlands, right there. Now, if we were looking at the moon from the northern hemisphere, this would be the left side of the moon. So over on the left side is like Apollo 12, Apollo 14, and then a 15 I think is over here. 11, 17 and 16 are over on the other end of the moon. Looks like a sea very tranquil. Sea of Tranquility is over here, as it's actually around the corner, so to speak. If I'm looking at this right, I'm probably looking at it wrong. Is there a reason that one part of the moon looks more smooth with less craters than the side we're seeing right now? Yeah, Mach. So the craters were obviously left by stuff that hit the moon. At one point, the moon was a just gigantic ball of lava. Yeah, a couple billion years ago, it was just a big ball of lava. These dark gray regions are basically what's left of those lava pools. They're basaltic regions. Basalt is just a combination of a bunch of metals. There's like iron and nickel and a bunch of other things in there. It was surrounded by liquid hot magma. Chat, stop humping the laser. Where's from, Moro? It's up here, Alex, if the orientation that I'm understanding is right. So, yeah, the darker gray areas are kind of left over from the lava, and then obviously the crater impacts are... Yeah, BH Freak, it's because space is full of stuff. It's not clean. It's not a clean place. There's a bunch of rocks, ice, there's all kinds of crap floating around up there. Did they do a science scan over the lowlands, midlands, and highlands? Yeah, you got to get those science points. Yeah, absolutely. They pointed the star tracker actually at the surface, Squishin, if you really want to know. On the outward powered flyby, they took pictures of the moon with the star tracker. You got to get those science points, man. How many more science points can NASA get from the moon? Dude, they've gotten like maybe 4 out of the millions, man. We've literally only scratched the surface on the moon. Yeah. Literally. I mean literally in the literal sense of the term. Just woke up. Did you miss anything? You missed a treat, dude. Check this out. Right before Orion went on the far side of the moon. It's orange. That's a pretty good shot there, huh? I mean, Jess, it's possible. And then this is the shot I was waiting for. Orion was in a blackout, but look at this one, Sleepy. What the fuck? Crescent Earth, baby. Cool, Core. Yeah. That's pretty good. Here, check this out. Let me zap it a little bit. Let me come on. We're gonna time warp here a little bit. Oh, dude. Dude. Look at it. That's awesome. Oh my goodness. This exists. This shot exists, man. Oh, that's cool. Earth. Delicious. time zoom? Describe the taste. Dirty. So they already did the burn. Yeah, the RPF burn is already done. The return powered flyby. They got the exposure right on this shot. Look at that. Want more volcano studies from the surface of the moon? They just found evidence of recent volcanic events. Yeah, me too, man. Last real burn before splashdown. Last big one, Ziggy. Yeah, they're going to do more course corrections with it. But yeah, in terms of like big, you know, event sequencing stuff, yeah. Like sequence of events of the mission, yeah. They got to do course corrections, man. Sorry, move the mouse cursor. Look, you can see the lunar lowlands. Look at that. See? It's got a flat spot. She got a flat spot, man. Look. That's the lunar lowlands. You can actually see the curvature. Oh, that doesn't suck. That's really freaking cool. How is the flyby, geek? Here. How's this for a shot? Yeah, that what's the word? Doesn't suck. Yeah, that's pretty freaking cool. You should see right before they went on close approach to the moon. Look at this shot. This shot gets super crisp in a second. Oh. Bro. I'm with you, Ziggy. I know what's going on here, and I'm still like, hey. Hey, what up, moon? So that's Copernicus crater right there. That's where Apollo 18 was supposed to land, but supposed to land. That's the Death Star? No. It's too big to be a space station. Yeah, the ejecta, for sure. Did they get any good shots of the sites? There's a good one, but no, they're not close to they weren't close to the surface. So they were in the darkness when they were close to the surface, when they were closest to the surface, and they're gonna be over the sites basically like right now. You're seeing some of the Apollo landing sites here. I think it's 12, 14, and 15. I think. How big would you say that one crater is? Oh, Copernicus crater? I don't know. It's large. I hope they do, Squishin. Actually, I think one of the landing missions for the Artemis program should go to Apollo 17's landing site. They should go to Taurus Littrow. Now, why should they go to Taurus Littrow? Pick up where we left off. Get the lunar reconnaissance vehicle. See if it works. I'm serious. I think a case could be made for a really good case could be made for seeing how the equipment left over from the Apollo missions that's still down on the surface, how it fared after sitting up there for 50 years.
Discovery, go at throttle up.
What do you think about a moon railway if the wheels were like roller coaster wheels? It'd work. It'd be great. Shedding the heat from slowing down Pixelburger would be something really hard to do. Really hard to do. Like maybe actually with regenerative braking, you'd probably get it done. Supposedly, Mike, yeah. Yeah, Sleepy. Skydrift, 43 months. How's it going? It's going pretty good. All right, guys. Do we know where we're going to land when we do? South Pole. The prime landing site has not really been selected yet, but we have a good idea where it's going to be. Short bus. We're trying to get at the ice that's down there. All right. So, guys, the link to that stream that I'm showing is pinned in the chat. So, that's going to do it for me. I need to get some more real-life stuff done, and tomorrow we'll hit the grind again. Yep. Yeah. I didn't finish all the real-life stuff that I wanted to get done yesterday. Done. Because it's only one day. Are you coming back for the press conference? When's the press conference? Slacker, yeah. It's at 5 p.m.? Maybe. Maybe, Creeper. So anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed the return-powered flyby coverage. Shots of the moon are pretty freaking cool. So, if I don't see you for the press conference a little bit later, I'll see you guys tomorrow noontime. Jump right back into Kerbal. Make sure to do the P.O. Box thing already if you haven't. What do you think I'm going to do, man? I got stuff to do. So, I got stuff to do that I can't do on Sundays, you know? So, I'll see you guys. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the coverage. Let's see who we could drop a raid on. No, not raid on. Raid on, don't get near that stuff. That's bad for you. Anybody out there? Let's see. Oh, Shenru's playing some Vicky 3. Let's go see what he's up to. Nah, I already raid. Let's raid Shen. Just get a basement, you get raided. I don't know what you're talking about. Go see what Shenru's up to, and I'll talk to you guys later. Thank you very much for watching. Have a good day.